Become dangerously confident. React to nothing. Part 1. The Crack in the Armor. The first time Marcus Reed felt his world tilt on an axis he didn't recognize, he was standing in a crowded subway car on the 6 train, somewhere between Bleecker Street and Astor Place, and a stranger's elbow was pressing into his ribs with the casual cruelty of a city that had long ago forgotten how to apologize. He could have said something. Every muscle in his jaw wanted to speak, but something stopped him. Not fear, not politeness, but a strange, unfamiliar whisper from a part of his brain he rarely visited. Watch. Don't react. Just watch. Marcus was 34 years old, a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized hedge fund in Midtown, and by every external metric, he was successful. His apartment on the Upper East Side was small but tasteful. His salary cleared $200,000 a year. He wore tailored suits that fit his 6'1" frame with the precision of a second skin. He had a gym membership he actually used, a therapist he saw every other Tuesday, and a collection of vinyl records that made him interesting at dinner parties. But none of that mattered, because Marcus Reed had a secret that ate at him from the inside. He was a reactor. He reacted to everything. A dismissive glance from a colleague at work would send him into a spiral of self-doubt that lasted 3 days. A text message left unread would bloom into a conspiracy theory about friendships ending, careers collapsing, his entire personality being fundamentally unlikable. His boss, a sharp-tongued woman named Diane Kessler, who ran the derivatives desk with the precision of a neurosurgeon, could reduce him to stammering apologies with a single raised eyebrow. Marcus didn't just feel things, he overfelt them. He magnified them. He took the small, sharp stones of daily life and turned them into boulders that crushed him. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October when the crack appeared. The leaves along Fifth Avenue were turning the color of old gold, and the air had that particular New York crispness that made you believe anything was possible. Marcus was sitting in a conference room on the 47th floor of a glass tower that overlooked Central Park. The table was polished mahogany. The chairs were leather. The people around him wore expressions of controlled aggression, like wolves pretending to be sheep. The meeting was about a potential merger between 2 pharmaceutical companies. Marcus had prepared for 3 weeks. He had spreadsheets, he had projections, he had a PowerPoint deck with 72 slides, each one color-coded and annotated with footnotes that cited peer-reviewed journals. He had rehearsed his speaking points in front of his bathroom mirror every morning, timing himself with his phone's stopwatch. He was ready. But when Diane turned to him and said, "Marcus, give us the bottom line on the risk assessment. Fast, we don't have all day," something happened. Her tone was not unkind, but it was impatient. The word fast landed like a dart, and Marcus felt his chest tighten, his throat closed, the carefully rehearsed sentences scattered like pigeons in a storm. He started talking. Too fast, too high-pitched. He stumbled over a statistic, confusing 3.7% with $3.7 billion, and when someone chuckled, he corrected himself 3 times in rapid succession, each correction more flustered than the last. By the time he finished, his face was flushed, his palms were wet, and the room was silent in that particular way that said, "We are all embarrassed for you." Diane nodded once. "Okay. We'll revisit after legal weighs in." She moved on without another word. The meeting continued. But Marcus wasn't in the room anymore. He was already falling. After the meeting, he walked to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, and sat on the closed toilet lid with his head in his hands. His heart was pounding. His thoughts were a tornado of recriminations. "You're weak. You're a fraud. Everyone saw it. They know you don't belong here. You're 34 years old and you still can't speak in a meeting without falling apart." He stayed in that stall for 18 minutes. When he finally emerged, his eyes were red, and his carefully constructed mask of competence had crumbled to dust. That night, he didn't go home. He walked instead. He walked south from Midtown, past the bright lights of Times Square, past the theater crowds and the street vendors selling fake designer bags, past the Flatiron Building standing sharp and solitary against the bruised purple sky. He walked until he reached Union Square, where a homeless man was sitting on a milk crate, playing a harmonica with a sound so mournful it seemed to pull the sadness right out of the pavement. Marcus stopped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. He held it out. The homeless man looked at the money, then at Marcus, then back at the money. He didn't take it immediately. Instead, he stopped playing and said, "You look like a man who's lost a fight with himself." Marcus blinked. "What?" The man was maybe 60, with a gray beard that hadn't seen a trim in months, and eyes that had the unsettling clarity of someone who had seen too much and was no longer afraid. He wore a dirty green army jacket and fingerless gloves. His name, Marcus would later learn, was Leonard, but in that moment he was just a stranger with a harmonica and an unnerving ability to see straight through a person. "Your face," Leonard said. "It's got that look, like you just got fired from a job you didn't even want. Or maybe you didn't get fired. Maybe you just embarrassed yourself in front of people whose opinions shouldn't matter, but they do because you've built your whole sense of worth on what other people think." He shrugged. "Am I warm?" Marcus's hand was still outstretched, the $20 bill fluttering slightly in the evening breeze. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to leave, he wanted to run, but his feet wouldn't move. Leonard finally took the money. He folded it carefully, tucked it into his jacket pocket, and then tapped the milk crate beside him. "Sit. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to ask for more money. I'm just going to tell you something someone told me a long time ago, back when I still had a name that mattered." Marcus sat. He didn't know why, but he sat. Leonard looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "You react. You react to everything. A look, a word, a silence. Someone doesn't smile at you and you think it's a declaration of war. Someone criticizes you and you rewrite your entire life story to make yourself the villain. Am I right?" Marcus nodded slowly. "How do you know that?" "Because I was you, 30 years ago. I had a corner office, a wife, a kid, a Porsche, and I was the most reactive son of a bitch you ever met. Every slight was a wound, every disagreement was a battle, every moment of silence was an accusation. I lived my entire life on the defensive, waiting for the next attack, and you know what it got me?" He pointed a fingerless glove at his chest. "This, a milk crate, a harmonica, and a family that doesn't know if I'm alive or dead." The words hung in the air. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a tectonic movement deep in his chest. He wanted to say something comforting, something like, "It's not too late for you," but he knew that would be hollow. Leonard wasn't asking for pity, he was offering a warning. "Here's what I learned, but I learned it too late. Confidence isn't about being loud. It isn't about being right all the time. It isn't about dominating rooms or impressing bosses or collecting achievements like trophies. Confidence is the ability to react to nothing, to let the world throw its worst at you, insults, failures, betrayals, humiliations, and to stand there like a mountain. The mountain doesn't flinch when the wind screams at it. The mountain doesn't argue with the rain. The mountain just is. That's dangerous confidence, and you don't have it. But you could."
Marcus opened his mouth to ask how. How does a man become a mountain when he spent 34 years as a leaf? But before he could speak, Leonard stood up. He tucked the harmonica into his pocket, picked up his milk crate, and started walking toward the subway entrance. "Wait!" Marcus called after him. "How? How do I learn?" Leonard paused. He looked back over his shoulder, and for a moment, the streetlight caught his face in a way that made him look almost regal. "Come back tomorrow, same time. I'll tell you the first step, but only if you promise to do one thing between now and then." "Anything?" Leonard smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was a flicker of something else in it. Hope, maybe, or amusement. "Tomorrow, someone will do something that makes you want to react. A coworker will say something passive-aggressive, a stranger will cut you off in traffic. Your phone will buzz with a message that makes your stomach drop. And when that happens, you're going to do nothing. You're going to feel the impulse, the fire in your chest, the words forming on your tongue, the desperate need to respond, to defend, to explain, to attack. And you're going to let it pass. You're going to count to 10, then 20, then 30. And you're going to say nothing, do nothing, react to nothing. Can you do that? Marcus didn't know if he could. He had never tried, but he nodded anyway. Leonard disappeared down the subway stairs, and Marcus was left standing in Union Square, surrounded by the noise of the city, feeling more alone and more strangely awake than he had felt in years. He pulled out his phone. No new messages. He put it away. He started walking home, his mind racing with a single thought: react to nothing. But as he turned onto Broadway, his phone buzzed. A text from Diane Kessler. "Can you come in early tomorrow? Need to discuss your performance in today's meeting." Marcus stopped walking. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. His heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to type an apology, an explanation, a desperate plea for reassurance. He could feel the words crowding his throat. "I'm sorry, I was nervous. I'll do better. Please don't fire me." He closed the phone. He put it in his pocket. He counted to 10, then 20, then 30. He did not reply. And the night swallowed him whole, leaving him standing on a street corner in New York City, wondering if he had just taken the first step toward becoming dangerous, or if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Part 2. The Silence That Roars. The next morning, Marcus awoke at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before his alarm, with the peculiar sensation that his entire nervous system had been rewired while he slept. The text from Diane was still unanswered, glowing on his phone screen like an unextinguished ember. He had checked it 12 times during the night. Each time his thumb had twitched toward the keyboard. Each time he had forced himself to put the phone back down. By 3 a.m., he had stopped checking, not because the urge had disappeared, but because something stranger had taken its place, a kind of hollow curiosity. "What happens if I just don't respond?" he had asked the darkness. The darkness didn't answer, but the question itself felt like a key turning in a lock. He showered for 20 minutes, letting the hot water drum against his shoulder blades while he rehearsed the morning ahead. His apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of the city waking up. He could hear sirens on First Avenue, the rumble of garbage trucks, the occasional shout from a delivery driver arguing with a double-parked car. Normal sounds, but today they seemed different, sharper, as if someone had turned up the volume on reality. By 6:30 a.m., he was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, a white shirt, and a tie the color of dried blood. He stood in front of his hallway mirror and looked at his own reflection. Same face, same tired eyes, same slight asymmetry in his jaw that had bothered him since adolescence. But something was different. He couldn't name it. Maybe it was just lack of sleep, or maybe, just maybe, there was a flicker of something new behind his eyes, a stillness, a question mark. He took the subway to Midtown. The 6 train was packed, as always. A woman in business casual accidentally stepped on his shoe. He felt the flare of annoyance. Say something, she didn't even apologize. And then he remembered Leonard's instruction: count to 10. He counted. When he reached 10, the woman had already moved on, lost in her phone. The moment was gone. The universe had not collapsed because he failed to defend his shoe. He filed that away. He arrived at the office at 7:15, 15 minutes before Diane's requested time. The 47th floor was mostly empty. A few early birds hunched over their monitors, sipping coffee from ceramic mugs that bore the logos of expensive universities. The cleaning crew was still vacuuming the carpet in the far corner. The air smelled of lemon polish and anxiety. Diane's office was at the end of the hall, a corner space with windows that faced both north and west. Marcus had been in that office exactly 4 times in 2 years. Each time, he had left feeling smaller than when he entered. He walked toward it now, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet, his heart performing a drum solo against his ribs. The door was open. Diane was already at her desk, reading something on her computer screen. She didn't look up when he appeared in the doorway. She just said, "Close the door and sit." He closed the door. He sat in the leather chair across from her desk. His hands rested on his thighs. He remembered Leonard's words, The mountain doesn't flinch. He tried to become a mountain. It felt ridiculous, but he tried. Diane finished reading whatever she was reading. Then she turned to face him fully. She was 52 years old, with short silver hair that she wore like a crown, and the kind of face that had been beautiful once, but had been sharpened by ambition into something more formidable. Her eyes were pale blue and missed nothing. "Marcus," she said, "I sent you a text last night. You didn't respond." He felt the urge to apologize. The words rose in his throat like bile. "I'm sorry. I was tired. I didn't see it until late. I didn't want to disturb you." He swallowed them. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "I saw it." His voice came out steady. That surprised him. Diane raised her eyebrow. "And you chose not to reply?" "Yes." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Diane studied him. He could feel her assessment, the way she was recalculating her mental model of who he was. He wanted to fill the silence with words, with explanations, with anything that would make him seem less strange, but he held. He held like his life depended on it. Finally, Diane leaned back in her chair. "Interesting," she said. "Yesterday, you fell apart in a meeting, stammering, sweating, confusing billions with percentages. I've seen junior analysts with less experience handle more pressure. I was going to recommend you for a performance improvement plan. I had the paperwork drafted." Marcus's stomach dropped, but he didn't let it show on his face. He kept his expression neutral. He kept breathing. React to nothing. "But," Diane continued, "I wanted to talk to you first, because I've also seen you do brilliant work. Your risk assessment models are the best on the team. Your attention to detail is exceptional. The problem isn't your brain, Marcus. It's your nerve. You're smart, but you're fragile. And fragility in this business is a career killer." She paused. She picked up a pen and tapped it at her desk. Tap, tap, tap. "Not replying to my text was either incredibly stupid or incredibly smart. I haven't decided which, but it got my attention. No one on this team ignores my messages. They're too busy kissing my ring. So I'm going to give you one chance." She slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a project assignment. A small, struggling biotech startup called Viridian Therapeutics was looking for a hedge fund to take them public. The file was a mess. Incomplete financials, a CEO with a criminal record, a DUI from 2018, and a drug pipeline that was either revolutionary or nonsense. Diane wanted Marcus to go to their headquarters in Brooklyn, spend a week doing due diligence, and come back with a recommendation. "This is a test," she said. "You're going to be the only analyst on this. No hand-holding, no second opinions. You're going to sit across the table from people who will lie to you, manipulate you, and try to charm you. They will test your patience, they will test your judgment, and they will definitely test your confidence. If you come back with a solid recommendation backed by real data, we'll talk about your future here. If you come back with excuses, or if you fall apart again, you're done. Do you understand?"
Marcus picked up the paper. He read it. His hands did not shake. He looked at Diane. "I understand." "One more thing," Diane said. "The CEO of Viridian is a man named Julian Cross. He's difficult. He has a temper. He's been known to yell at people. He'll try to intimidate you. He'll try to make you doubt yourself. Your job is to see through all of that and figure out whether this company is worth our money. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about Leonard on the milk crate. He thought about the mountain. He thought about the text he had not replied to, and he said, "Yes, I can." Diane nodded slowly. "We'll see. You start tomorrow. Don't make me regret this." Marcus stood up. He walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Diane spoke again. "Marcus," he turned, "whatever you did between yesterday and today, the not replying, the calm, keep doing it. Something shifted in you. I don't know what, but don't let it go." He left her office. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and realized his hands were shaking now. The calm had been an act, a performance, a desperate grip on a technique he had only begun to learn. But it had worked. He had not apologized. He had not groveled. He had not filled the silence with nervous chatter. He had simply been. He pulled out his phone. Still no reply from him to Diane's text. He scrolled to Leonard's number. He had gotten it last night, scribbled on a piece of cardboard, and typed a message.
I did it. I didn't react. What's next? 3 dots appeared. Then Leonard's reply. Come to the park at 7 p.m. Wear comfortable shoes. The first lesson is about to hurt. Marcus stared at the message. The first lesson is about to hurt. He didn't know what that meant, but for the first time in years, he was not afraid. He was curious. And curiosity, he was beginning to understand, was the opposite of reactivity. Curiosity watches. Reactivity flinches. Curiosity asks. Reactivity answers before the question is finished. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. Marcus informed his team that he would be off-site for the next week, working on the Viridian project. He gathered files. He read the preliminary reports. He learned that Julian, the CEO, had a reputation as a bully. Former employees described him as volatile, explosive, and someone who enjoys making people cry. One Glassdoor review said, "Working for Julian is like being in an abusive relationship. He screams at you, then buys you lunch. You never know which version you're going to get." Marcus underlined that sentence. He wrote in the margin, "He wants a reaction. Don't give him one." At 6:45 p.m., he left the office. He changed into jeans, a black hoodie, and running shoes. He took the subway to Union Square. The park was crowded with the usual evening crowd. Dog walkers, skateboarders, couples holding hands, a man playing bongos with more enthusiasm than skill. Leonard was sitting on the same milk crate in the same spot, wearing the same army jacket. He was not playing the harmonica. He was just sitting, watching the world move around him with the patience of a statue. Marcus approached. "I'm here." Leonard looked up. He smiled. It was a different smile than last night, less sad, more appraising. "You came. Good. Most people don't come back after the first assignment. They try the not reacting thing. It feels weird. They decide it's not for them, and they go back to being leaves in the wind. But you came back." "I didn't reply to my boss's text. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." Leonard nodded. "It gets easier. Then it gets harder. Then it gets easier again. That's the pattern. The first step is always the hardest because you're fighting against a lifetime of programming. Your brain thinks that reacting is survival. It thinks that if you don't respond immediately to a threat, to an insult, to a question, something terrible will happen. But nothing terrible happened, did it?" Marcus thought about it. No, nothing terrible happened. She actually seemed impressed. She was, because people who don't react are rare. They're dangerous. They make everyone around them feel exposed. When you don't react, you force other people to sit with their own discomfort. That's power, real power. Not the kind that comes from titles or money, the kind that comes from inside. Leonard stood up. He picked up his milk crate and carried it to a bench near the park's edge. He set it down and sat on the bench instead, gesturing for Marcus to sit beside him. "Tonight," Leonard said, "we start the real work. The first lesson is about pain. Not physical pain, though we might get to that later. Emotional pain. The kind that makes you want to run, or fight, or hide. The kind that makes you check your phone 100 times, or rehearse conversations in your head, or lose sleep over something someone said 6 years ago." Marcus sat down. The bench was cold. The city hummed around them. "Here's the truth," Leonard continued. "You react because you're afraid. You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of being wrong. You're afraid of being seen as weak. You're afraid of being forgotten. You're afraid of being humiliated. Every reaction you've ever had, every defensive comment, every apologetic email, every sleepless night spent obsessing over a perceived slight is just fear wearing a mask. Remove the fear and the reactions stop." "That sounds simple," Marcus said. "It is simple. It's not easy. There's a difference." Leonard reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. The cover was duct-taped. The pages were yellow. He opened it to a page covered with cramped handwriting. "This is my journal when I was learning. I wrote down everything. The lessons, the failures, the breakthroughs. I'm going to share some of it with you. But first, I need you to do something. Anything." Leonard turned to face him. His eyes were serious now, the amusement gone. "I need you to tell me the thing you're most ashamed of. The memory that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin. The one you've never told anyone. If you can't be honest with me, you'll never learn to be honest with yourself. And if you can't be honest with yourself, you'll never be dangerously confident." Marcus's throat went dry. His heart started pounding again.
Every instinct told him to deflect, to joke, to change the subject. But he remembered the mountain. He remembered the text. He took a breath. And then he began to speak.
The shameful part is what happened next. Marcus's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Todd started to like me. After that meeting, he became almost friendly. He'd invite me to drinks with the team. He'd give me small compliments. "Good job on that report, Marcus. Nice catch on the variance analysis." I was so desperate for approval that I didn't see what was happening. He was grooming me. Not in a sexual way, in a professional way. He was turning me into his errand boy, his yes man, his emotional support animal. And I let him. For 2 years, I let him. What did he do? Marcus looked down at his hands. He'd call me at 11 p.m. on a Saturday to run some numbers that were never urgent. He'd ask me to cover for him when he showed up hungover to client meetings. He'd take credit for my work in front of senior management, and I'd smile and nod because I was afraid that if I said anything, he'd go back to being the guy who called me a liability. One time, he actually told me, "You're lucky I'm here to protect you. Without me, they would have fired you in your first month." And I believed him. I was grateful to him. That's the shameful part. Not that he was a manipulative asshole, but that I let him be one, that I thanked him for it. Leonard was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Marcus had ever heard it. "Do you know why that memory still hurts? Because I was weak? No, because you were human. You were 22 years old, alone in a new city, desperate to prove yourself. And a predator smelled that desperation and exploited it. That's not weakness. That's being young. But here's the part you need to hear. You're not 22 anymore. You're 34. And you're still carrying Todd Hemmings around in your head like a ghost. Every time you react to criticism, every time you apologize for things that aren't your fault, every time you assume that someone is about to tell you you're a liability, that's Todd. He's still in your head, and you need to evict him." "How?" Leonard opened his duct tape notebook. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. Then he read aloud. "Lesson 4. The past is not a prophecy. Just because someone once made you feel small does not mean you are small. The people who hurt you were not oracles. They were just people. Their opinions have no more weight than you give them." He closed the notebook. "I wrote that after I lost everything. I was living in a shelter in the Bronx. I had a bottle of vodka in one hand and a razor blade in the other, and I realized that the voice telling me I was worthless wasn't my own voice. It was my father's. He had told me I would never amount to anything. He had said it so many times, starting when I was 8 years old, that I had absorbed it. I had made his voice my internal monologue, and I had been reacting to that voice my entire life, drinking to silence it, working to prove it wrong, pushing people away so they couldn't confirm it. Every reaction was just me dancing to my father's music." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "So how do you stop?" "You start by separating the signal from the noise," Leonard said. "Most of what triggers you is noise. A boss's impatient tone, a stranger's dismissive glance, a friend's delayed text. These are not threats. They are weather. They pass. But some things are signal, real feedback, real danger, real opportunities. The problem is, when you're reactive, everything feels like a 5-alarm fire. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a coworker rolling their eyes and a bear charging at you. So you respond to everything with the same frantic energy, and that exhausts you. It makes you brittle. It makes you predictable. So how do I learn to tell the difference?" Leonard smiled. "That's what the next week is for. But before we get there, I need you to do something else, something harder than telling me your shameful memory." Marcus braced himself. "What?" "I need you to go to work tomorrow, meet Julian Cross, and not react to anything he says or does. Not a flinch, not a defensive word, not an apologetic glance, nothing. You're going to sit there, and you're going to let him throw his worst at you, and you're going to be a mountain. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about it. He'd read Julian Cross's file. He'd seen the Glassdoor reviews. He'd prepared himself for a bully, but preparation and reality were different things. He remembered how he had felt in Diane's office that morning, the shaking hands, the effort it took to stay calm. That was just Diane. She was tough but fair. Julian sounded like a different species entirely. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I've never been good with aggressive people. I freeze, or I apologize, or I try to make them like me." "That's because you're trying to control their perception of you. You want them to think you're competent. You want them to think you're likable. You want them to think you're not a liability. And that need, that desperate, hungry need, is what they exploit. The dangerously confident person doesn't need anyone to think anything about them. They know who they are. The rest is noise." Marcus nodded slowly. He understood the theory, but understanding and embodying were different things. He'd spent 34 years seeking approval. He'd built his entire identity on being liked, on being seen as smart and capable and nice. The idea of letting go of that, of not caring what Julian Cross thought of him, felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'll try," he said. Leonard shook his head. "No, trying is for people who are preparing to fail. You will either do it or you won't. There is no try." Marcus felt a spark of irritation. It was a small spark, barely noticeable, but it was there. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say that it wasn't fair, that Leonard didn't understand how hard this was, that he was doing his best. But he caught himself. That was a reaction. That was the old Marcus, the one who needed to be understood and validated. Instead, he took a breath. "I will do it." Leonard's smile widened. "Good. Now go home, sleep. Tomorrow you begin the real test." "And Marcus?" "Yes? When Julian tries to get a reaction out of you, and he will, remember this. His anger is not about you. It's about him. He's scared. He's insecure. He's desperate to control the room because he can't control himself. Your job is to let him be angry without letting his anger become yours. That's the secret. That's the whole thing. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. And water doesn't react. It just flows." Marcus stood up. He thanked Leonard. He walked to the subway, descended into the tunnels, and rode the 6 train back to the Upper East Side. When he got home, he did not check his email. He did not rehearse conversations with Julian Cross. He did not look up more Glassdoor reviews. Instead, he took a shower, made a cup of herbal tea, and sat in the dark of his living room watching the city lights flicker through his window. He thought about Todd Hemmings. He thought about the bathroom stall. He thought about all the times he had apologized for things that weren't his fault, all the times he had stayed silent when he should have spoken, all the times he had let someone else's opinion of him become his own opinion of himself. And for the first time, he felt something other than shame. He felt anger. Not the hot, reactive anger that made him want to lash out, a cold, quiet anger, the kind that said, "No more." He went to bed at 10 p.m. He slept without dreaming, and when his alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., he woke up not with the usual knot of anxiety in his stomach, but with a strange, unfamiliar sense of purpose. Today, he would meet Julian Cross. Today, he would not flinch. Today, he would learn if he was capable of becoming the man he wanted to be, or whether he would remain forever the man who cried in bathroom stalls. The subway ride to Brooklyn took 40 minutes. Marcus spent it reading the Viridian file again, underlining key passages, making notes in the margins. The company was based in an old warehouse in Gowanus, a neighborhood that had once been industrial and now was a strange mix of artists, tech startups, and luxury condos. The building had a metal facade and a buzzer system that required you to state your name and business. Marcus pressed the button. A voice crackled through the speaker. "Name?" "Marcus Reed, hedge fund, here to see Julian Cross." A long pause. Then the door clicked open. The lobby was sparse. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, a single receptionist sitting behind a plywood desk. She looked up at him with an expression of tired wariness. "He's in the back, conference room B. Fair warning, he's in a mood."
Marcus nodded. He walked down a long corridor lined with whiteboards covered in indecipherable chemical formulas. He passed a break room where 2 employees were whispering to each other, their faces pale. He passed a lab where technicians in white coats were peering into microscopes. And then he reached a door marked Conference Room B. He knocked. "Come in," a voice barked from inside. Marcus opened the door. Julian Cross was not what he expected.
He had imagined a large, blustering man, someone who would loom and shout. Instead, Julian was small, maybe 5'6", wiry. He had a shaved head, a goatee that had been trimmed into a sharp point, and eyes that were so pale they were almost colorless. He was wearing a black t-shirt that said, "Make noise," in white letters. He was standing at the head of a long table, his arms crossed, his weight shifted onto one hip like a boxer waiting for the bell. "You're late," Julian said. Marcus glanced at his watch. It was 8:02 a.m. His meeting was scheduled for 8 o'clock. "I'm 2 minutes late." His voice was calm. He did not apologize. Julian's eyes narrowed. 2 minutes is late. In my company, late means you don't respect my time. And if you don't respect my time, you don't respect me. And if you don't respect me, we have nothing to talk about. Marcus stood in the doorway. He did not step forward. He did not step back. He simply stood there, his hand still on the door handle, and looked at Julian with an expression of neutral curiosity. He remembered Leonard's words. His anger is not about you. It's about him. "I apologize for any inconvenience," Marcus said. He did not apologize for being late. He apologized for the inconvenience. It was a subtle shift, but it was deliberate. "Shall I come back at a different time, or would you like to begin now?" Julian stared at him. The silence stretched. Marcus could feel the weight of Julian's gaze, the attempt to intimidate, to force a reaction, but he held. He counted silently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then Julian laughed. It was a short, sharp laugh, more surprise than amusement. "Okay," he said. "Okay, you're different. Most people fall over themselves apologizing when I call them out. You didn't. I like that. Sit down." Marcus sat. He placed his notebook on the table. He opened it to a blank page, and he waited. Julian sat across from him, leaning back in his chair, putting his feet up on the table. His sneakers were expensive, limited edition Nikes, the kind that cost more than a mortgage payment. "So," he said, "you're here to decide whether my company is worth your firm's money. Let me save you some time. It is. We have a drug that's going to change the world. We have patents, we have data, and we have a timeline that's aggressive but achievable. The only question is whether you're smart enough to see what's in front of you." Marcus wrote a note. Confident, possibly overconfident. Watch for gaps. "I'd like to start with your financials. Your Q3 report shows a burn rate of 1.2 million per month, but your disclosed funding only covers 9 more months at that rate. How do you plan to bridge the gap before your next milestone?" Julian's smile faded. He took his feet off the table. He leaned forward. "That's a fair question," he said. "We have a bridge loan in place. 2 million from a private investor. It's not in the file because the paperwork was finalized yesterday." "May I see the term sheet?" Julian's jaw tightened. "You don't trust me?" "I trust data. It's nothing personal." Another long silence. Marcus could feel Julian's anger building, the pressure of it like heat from a stove, but he didn't look away. He didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter. He just sat there, pen in hand, waiting. Finally, Julian stood up. "I'll have my CFO send it to you. But let me tell you something, Marcus. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've taken 2 companies public. I've raised over $200 million. I've sat across the table from analysts who thought they were smarter than me, and every single one of them ended up agreeing with me. Because I don't bluff, I don't exaggerate, and I don't tolerate people who question my integrity." Marcus nodded. He wrote another note. Defensive, reacts to skepticism with threats. Then he looked up and said, "I'm not questioning your integrity. I'm doing my job. If the term sheet exists, I'll review it and we'll move forward.
If it doesn't, we'll have a different conversation. Does that sound fair?" Julian stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he sat back down. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" "Someone soft, someone who would let me run the meeting, someone who would nod and smile, and then go back to their firm and write a report that says whatever they think their boss wants to hear." Marcus allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "I used to be that person, not anymore." The rest of the meeting lasted 2 hours. Julian tested him repeatedly, making contradictory statements, asking pointed questions, occasionally raising his voice, but Marcus did not react. He did not flinch. He did not apologize. He simply asked questions, took notes, and maintained the calm, neutral expression of a man who had nothing to prove. By the end, Julian was visibly exhausted. His voice had lost its edge. His shoulders had slumped. He looked at Marcus with something that might have been respect or might have been confusion. "Same time tomorrow?" Marcus asked as he packed his bag. "Same time tomorrow," Marcus said. He stood up, shook Julian's hand, and walked out of the conference room. He made it to the elevator before his hands started shaking. He made it to the street before his knees went weak. He leaned against a brick wall, closed his eyes, and breathed. He had done it. He had faced the bully and not broken. He had been a mountain. But as he walked toward the subway, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think you're calm. You think you're strong. I've seen men like you before. They always crack. The question is when. J.C." Marcus stared at the message. Julian had found his personal number. That was a boundary violation. That was a threat. That was designed to get a reaction. He typed nothing. He put the phone away. He counted to 10. And then he called Leonard. "I need to see you tonight. He's not done with me, and honestly, neither am I."
Part 4. The Art of the Pause. Leonard was waiting for him at the same bench in Union Square, but this time he wasn't alone. Sitting next to him was a woman in her late 40s with close-cropped gray hair, a leather jacket covered in patches, and the kind of face that looked like it had been through a war and decided to stay. She was holding a cardboard cup of coffee and staring at Marcus with an expression that was neither friendly nor unfriendly, just assessing. "Marcus," Leonard said, "this is Teresa. She's going to help with tonight's lesson." Teresa nodded once. "Leonard tells me you're learning to react to nothing. That's good. Most people never even try. But there's a difference between not reacting and being a doormat. You need to know the difference, or you'll end up letting people walk all over you while you stand there smiling like a Buddha statue." Marcus sat down on the bench. He was still buzzing from the meeting with Julian, still processing the text message. "I got a message from him after I left. He said I'd crack. He said he'd seen men like me before." "Men like you?" Teresa raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean? Men who were learning? Men who used to be reactive? Men who were trying to change?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe men who seem calm on the outside but are falling apart on the inside." Teresa exchanged a glance with Leonard, then she turned back to Marcus. "Here's the thing about people like Julian. They're predators. They can smell fear. They can smell insecurity. They can smell the gap between who you are and who you want to be. And they will poke at that gap until you bleed. The only way to survive is to close the gap, to become so solid, so certain of who you are that nothing they say can touch you." "That's what I'm trying to do," Marcus said. "Trying isn't enough." Teresa set down her coffee and leaned forward. "Tonight, we're going to teach you the most important skill in the dangerously confident person's toolkit. It's not meditation. It's not positive thinking. It's not affirmations or visualization or any of that self-help nonsense. It's a simple, mechanical skill that you can practice anywhere, anytime. It's called the pause." Leonard nodded. "The pause is exactly what it sounds like. When something happens that triggers you, an insult, a criticism, a threat, a piece of bad news, you pause. You do nothing, you say nothing, you just stop. For for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, however long it takes for the initial wave of emotion to pass. That sounds easy, Marcus said. It's not, Teresa said, because your body is going to scream at you to react. Your heart will race, your palms will sweat, your throat will close up, your brain will flood with cortisol and adrenaline. Every evolutionary instinct you have will tell you to fight, flee, or freeze. The pause is you overriding those instincts. It's you saying to your own nervous system, I am in control, not you. Marcus thought about the meeting. He had paused. Every time Julian had tested him, he had taken a breath, counted silently, and waited. It had worked, but it had also been exhausting. By the end of 2 hours, he had felt like a marathon runner crossing the finish line, empty, trembling, barely standing. I did it today. I paused. It worked, but it took everything I had. Good, Teresa said. That means you're doing it right. The pause isn't supposed to feel natural. It's a skill. And like any skill, it requires practice, lots of practice, thousands of reps, until it becomes automatic, until the pause happens before the reaction has a chance to form. Leonard pulled out his duct-taped notebook. He flipped to a new page and handed it to Marcus. I want you to write this down. It's a practice routine. Do it every day for the next week, morning and night, no excuses. Marcus took the notebook. The page read, The Pause Practice. 1. Sit in a quiet room, close your eyes. 2. Think of a situation that normally triggers you, a boss's criticism, a partner's silence, a stranger's rudeness. 3. Notice the physical sensations in your body, the racing heart, the tight chest, the clenched jaw. 4. Instead of reacting, breathe. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Repeat for 5 minutes. Then open your eyes and say aloud, I am not my reactions. I am the observer. Marcus read it twice. It seemed almost laughably simple, but he had learned enough in the past 2 days to know that simple and easy were not the same thing. This feels like meditation, he said. It is meditation, Teresa said, but don't let that turn you off. Meditation gets a bad reputation because people think it's about emptying your mind or achieving enlightenment. It's not. It's about training your attention, and your attention is the foundation of everything. If you can control your attention, you can control your reactions. If you can control your reactions, you can control your life. Marcus pocketed the notebook. What about Julian? He has my number now. He's going to keep testing me. Let him. Every test is an opportunity to practice. When Julian sends you a message designed to provoke you, you pause, you breathe, you decide whether to respond or not. And if you do respond, you respond from a place of choice, not compulsion. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic. Response is deliberate. And if I can't do it? If I crack? Teresa's face softened just slightly. Then you try again. That's the other secret. Dangerous confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent. You will fail. You will react when you meant to pause. You will send an email you regret. You will lose your temper. And when that happens, you don't beat yourself up. You don't spiral. You just notice the failure, learn from it, and try again. That's what Leonard and I are here for, to remind you that falling isn't the same as staying down. Marcus looked at the two of them. Leonard in his dirty army jacket, Teresa in her patched leather. They were not what he had expected when he started this journey. They were not coaches in the traditional sense. They had no certifications, no websites, no social media presence. They were just two people who had been through the fire and come out the other side. And somehow, that made them more credible than any expert he had ever met. Okay, he said. What's next? Leonard stood up. Next, you go home. You practice the pause. You read Julian's file again, but this time you read it like a detective, not a student. Look for the gaps. Look for the places where the story doesn't add up. Julian is hiding something. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it. He's too defensive, too quick to anger. A confident person doesn't need to threaten analysts who ask questions, so something is wrong. Find it. Marcus nodded. He stood up, shook both their hands, and walked toward the subway. But before he descended the stairs, he turned back and asked, "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You have nothing to gain." Leonard and Teresa looked at each other. Then Leonard said, "Because someone helped us once, when we were at our lowest, when we had nothing. And the only way to repay that debt is to pass it on. Now go. You have work to do." Marcus went home. He practiced the pause for 10 minutes before bed. He sat in the dark, closed his eyes, and thought about Julian's text. "You think you're calm? You think you're strong? I've seen men like you before. They always crack." He noticed the physical sensations, the tightness in his chest, the heat in his face, the urge to type a furious reply. And he breathed. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The urge did not disappear, but it became softer. It became something he could observe rather than something he had to obey. When he opened his eyes, he felt different. Not calm exactly, but anchored, like a ship that had dropped its anchor in a storm. The waves were still crashing, the wind was still howling, but he was no longer drifting. He picked up Julian's file. He read it again, slowly, carefully, looking for inconsistencies. And then he found it. Buried on page 47 of the appendix, in a footnote so small it was almost invisible, was a reference to a previous company Julian had founded. The company was called NextGen Bio. It had gone bankrupt in 2019, but the file didn't mention the bankruptcy. It just mentioned the company in passing, as if it were a minor detail. Marcus opened his laptop. He searched for NextGen Bio. What he found made his blood run cold.
Part 5. The Ghost of NextGen Bio. The story of NextGen Bio was not hard to find once Marcus knew where to look. The company had been founded in 2016, the same year Julian Cross had moved to New York from San Francisco. It was a biotech startup focused on gene therapies for rare diseases, similar to Viridian, but with a different target. The company had raised $40 million in venture capital. It had hired 70 employees. It had leased a state-of-the-art lab in Long Island City. And then, 3 years later, it had collapsed. Marcus spent the next 3 hours reading every article, every SEC filing, every blog post, and every court document he could find. The collapse of NextGen Bio was not a simple failure. It was a catastrophe. The company's lead drug candidate had failed its phase 2 trials, but instead of disclosing the failure to investors, Julian had continued to raise money. He had presented manipulated data. He had fired the whistleblower who tried to stop him, and when the truth finally came out, the company had imploded. Investors lost everything, employees were laid off without severance, and Julian had walked away with a golden parachute, a severance package of $2 million negotiated in secret as part of his departure agreement. The court documents were damning. There had been a lawsuit. Investors had sued Julian for fraud, but the case had been settled out of court, with Julian paying a fine and admitting no wrongdoing. The settlement was sealed. The details were hidden, but the public record still contained enough information to paint a clear picture. Julian Cross was not a visionary entrepreneur. He was a con man. Marcus sat back in his chair, his heart pounding. He had found it, the thing Julian was hiding, the reason he was so defensive, so quick to anger, so desperate to control the narrative. He had done this before. He had built a company on lies, and when the lies were exposed, he had run away with the money, and now he was doing it again. But Marcus needed more than suspicion. He needed proof. The file from Diane contained only the positive information about Viridian, the glossy presentation, the optimistic projections, the carefully curated data. It did not mention NextGen. It did not mention the fraud. It was as if Julian had erased his past and started over. Marcus picked up his phone. It was 11:30 p.m., too late to call anyone, but he sent an email to a contact at the SEC, a former classmate from Michigan who worked in enforcement. He kept it brief. "Hey, do you have any information on a sealed settlement involving Julian Cross and NextGen Bio? Working on a due diligence project. Any help would be appreciated." Then he closed his laptop and tried to sleep, but sleep didn't come.
His mind was racing, not with anxiety this time, but with a cold, clear determination. He was no longer afraid of Julian. He was hunting him. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Viridian's office at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. He wanted to catch Julian off guard. He wanted to see the look on his face when he realized that someone had done their homework. Julian was already there, pacing in the conference room, talking on his phone in a low, angry voice. When he saw Marcus, he ended the call abruptly and plastered on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marcus, right on time. Or early, I should say. That's a good sign." Marcus sat down. He did not smile back. He opened his notebook to a page he had prepared the night before. On it, he had written a single question. What happened at NextGen Bio? Julian's smile faltered. What? Marcus repeated the question. What happened at NextGen Bio? I read about it last night. The failed trials, the manipulated data, the lawsuit, the sealed settlement. I'm curious how that experience informed your approach to Viridian. The room went very quiet. Julian's face cycled through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, anger, fear, and then something that looked almost like relief. He sat down heavily in his chair. For the first time, he did not look like a predator. He looked like a man who had been caught. "How did you find out about that?" Julian's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm an analyst. It's my job to find things." Julian stared at him. The silence stretched. Marcus did not fill it. He sat with his hands folded on the table, his expression neutral, his breathing steady. He was not enjoying this. He was not gloating. He was simply present, watching, waiting. Finally, Julian spoke. "You want to know what happened at NextGen? Fine, I'll tell you, but not because you caught me, because I'm tired of carrying it." And then Julian told him everything. How he started NextGen with good intentions, how he believed in the science, how the trials failed not because of fraud, but because of bad luck, a statistical anomaly, a manufacturing error, a combination of factors that no one could have predicted. How he panicked, how he hid the data because he was afraid of losing everything, how one lie led to another and another until he was trapped in a web of his own making. "I'm not a con man," Julian said, his voice cracking. "I'm a man who made a terrible decision and didn't know how to stop. And when it all fell apart, I lost everything. My reputation, my marriage, my sense of who I was. I spent 2 years in therapy. I almost killed myself. And then I decided to start over, to do it right this time. Viridian is my redemption. The science is real. The data is clean. I've done everything differently. But the past doesn't go away. It follows you. It waits in the shadows. And now you've found it." Marcus listened. He did not interrupt. He did not judge. He simply listened, the way Leonard had listened to him in Union Square. And when Julian was finished, Marcus said, "Thank you for telling me." Julian looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Are you going to recommend against funding?" "I don't know yet. That depends on the data, not on your past. But I need to see everything. The real data, not the glossy version. The raw numbers, the trial results, the manufacturing reports, everything. Can I have access?" Julian nodded slowly. "I'll have my team give you full access. No redactions, no filters." "One more thing," Marcus said. "The bridge loan you mentioned yesterday, the $2 million from a private investor. Who is it?" Julian hesitated. Then he said, "It's me. I'm the investor. I liquidated my retirement account to keep the company afloat. I didn't want anyone to know because it makes me look desperate. But I am desperate. This company is all I have left." Marcus wrote that down. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply recorded the information and moved on to the next question. By the end of the day, Marcus had filled 3 notebooks with data, observations, and questions. He had toured the lab, spoken to the scientists, and reviewed the clinical trial protocols, and he had begun to form a conclusion. Viridian was not a fraud. The science was promising, the team was talented, and Julian, for all his flaws, was genuinely trying to do better. But the past was not irrelevant. Investors had a right to know. Diane had a right to know, and Marcus had a duty to report what he had found. That evening, he met Leonard and Teresa at a diner in the East Village. Over plates of eggs and hash browns, he told them everything. When he finished, Leonard leaned back in his booth and let out a long breath. "So," Leonard said, "what are you going to do?" "I'm going to write the truth, the good and the bad. I'm going to tell Diane that Viridian has real potential, but that Julian has a history of deception. I'm going to recommend that we fund them with conditions, full transparency, independent board oversight, and regular audits. And I'm going to tell Julian that if he ever lies again, I will personally make sure he never works in this industry again." Teresa smiled. "That's not the answer of a man who reacts to nothing. That's the answer of a man who chooses his response." "It's the same thing," Marcus said. "Reacting to nothing doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not being controlled by your emotions. It means acting from a place of clarity instead of fear. I'm not afraid of Julian anymore. I'm not afraid of Diane. I'm not afraid of Todd Hemmings or any of the ghosts in my head. I'm just here, present, doing the work." Leonard reached across the table and clasped Marcus's forearm. "You're learning faster than I did, much faster, but the real test is still coming." "What do you mean?" Leonard's face grew serious. "You've been practicing the pause in controlled situations, meetings, texts, one-on-one conversations, but life is not controlled. Life will throw something at you that you don't expect, something that hits you where you're weakest, and in that moment, you'll find out whether you've truly changed or whether you're just performing." Marcus felt a chill. "What kind of thing?" "I don't know," Leonard said. "None of us do. But it's coming. It always comes. The question is whether you'll be ready."
Part 6. The Unexpected Call. The call came 3 days later, on a Friday afternoon, while Marcus was sitting in a coffee shop in Williamsburg reviewing the last of Viridian's manufacturing data. His phone buzzed. The screen said, "Mom." Marcus's mother, Linda Chen Reed, lived in Chicago with his father, David. They were good people, hard-working, loving, but they carried their own burdens, financial struggles, health problems, and a son who had always been too busy to visit. Marcus had not spoken to his mother in 3 weeks. He had been meaning to call. He had been meaning to call for months. He answered. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Her voice was strained. "Marcus, I need you to sit down." He sat. "What's wrong?" "It's your father. He had a heart attack this morning. He's in surgery now. They don't know if he's going to make it." The world stopped. Marcus felt the words hit him like a physical blow. His father, the man who had taught him to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to tie a tie, the man who had worked 2 jobs to put him through college, the man who had never once raised his voice, even when Marcus had failed, even when he had disappointed him. For a moment, Marcus felt the old urge, the desperate need to react, to cry, to scream, to fall apart, to book the first flight to Chicago and sit by his father's bed and beg him to hold on. His heart was racing, his hands were shaking, his vision blurred. And then he paused. He took a breath. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. His mother was still talking, her voice cracking with tears. "The doctors say it's serious. They're doing bypass surgery. It could take hours. I'm at the hospital now. I'm so scared, Marcus. I need you here." "I'm coming," Marcus said. His voice was steady. Not because he wasn't afraid. He was terrified. But the terror did not control him. "I'll book a flight. I'll be there tonight. Can you send me the hospital address?" His mother gave him the information. He wrote it down. He told her he loved her. He hung up. Then he sat in the coffee shop, surrounded by strangers typing on laptops and sipping lattes, and he allowed himself to feel everything. The fear, the grief, the guilt, the love. He did not push it away. He did not numb it. He just sat with it, breathing, observing, letting it move through him like a storm. And when the storm passed, not completely, but enough, he stood up, he packed his bag, he walked to the subway, he went home, packed a suitcase, and booked a flight to Chicago. He sent a message to Diane. "Family emergency. We'll send Viridian report by Monday, taking the red-eye to Chicago tonight." Diane replied within minutes. "Go.
Take care of your family. The report can wait. He sent a message to Leonard. My dad had a heart attack, flying to Chicago. Thank you for everything. I'll keep practicing. Leonard's reply came back immediately. The mountain doesn't flinch, but the mountain also feels. Be present, be kind to yourself, and call me if you need to talk. Marcus boarded the plane at 8 p.m. He sat in a window seat watching the lights of New York disappear beneath the clouds. He thought about his father. He thought about all the years he had spent chasing approval, chasing success, chasing validation from people that didn't matter. And he realized, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that none of it would matter if his father died. He had spent so much time reacting to the world that he had forgotten to live in it. He had been so focused on becoming dangerously confident that he had almost missed the point. Confidence wasn't about being untouchable. It was about being present. It was about showing up for the people you loved, even when you were afraid. It was about pausing long enough to feel, and then choosing to act with courage instead of fear. The plane landed at O'Hare at 9:45 p.m. Chicago time. Marcus took an Uber to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. He walked through the sliding doors, past the security desk, up to the cardiac ICU. His mother was sitting in a plastic chair outside the operating room, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale and drawn. She stood up when she saw him. They embraced. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The surgery is almost done, she whispered. The nurse said they'll update us in an hour. Marcus sat down next to her. He took her hand, and he waited. The hour passed, then another. Finally, a surgeon in blue scrubs came out. He was holding a clipboard. His face was unreadable. Family of David Reed? Marcus and his mother stood up. Yes. The surgeon smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. The surgery was successful. We were able to clear the blockage and repair the damage. He's in recovery now. He's going to need rest and rehabilitation, but he's going to live. Marcus's mother burst into tears. Marcus hugged her. He felt his own eyes sting, but he did not cry, not because he was holding back, but because he was full of relief, full of gratitude, full of a love he had not allowed himself to feel in years. They were allowed to see their father an hour later. David was lying in a hospital bed surrounded by beeping machines and IV lines. His face was pale, his eyes were closed, but he was breathing, steady, alive. Marcus pulled a chair up to the bed. He sat down. He took his father's hand. "Hey, Dad," he said quietly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His father's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Marcus. A slow smile spread across his face. "Hey, son, you came." "Of course I came. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I know I don't say it enough, but I am." Marcus squeezed his hand. He did not say, "I'm proud of you too," or "I love you," or any of the other things he had been saving for the right moment. He just sat there, present, breathing, being. And in that silence, he understood something Leonard had tried to teach him from the beginning. Dangerously confident people do not need to prove anything. They do not need to fill silences with words. They do not need to perform their emotions or explain their love. They simply show up. They simply stay.
Part 7. The Long Night. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Marcus had sent his mother home to sleep. She was exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear, and had promised to call if anything changed. Now he sat alone in the dim light, watching his father's chest rise and fall, feeling the weight of the last few days pressing down on him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the subway platform where he had first met Leonard, the conference room where he had faced Julian Cross, the coffee shop where he had received the call about his father. Each moment had been a test. Each moment had been an opportunity to react or to pause. And somehow, impossibly, he had paused. But the night was long, and the mind, when left alone in the dark, has a way of turning on itself. At 2 a.m., his father stirred. He opened his eyes and looked at Marcus. "You're still here," he said,
his voice raspy. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." David smiled weakly. "You always were a stubborn kid. Remember when you were 10 and you decided you were going to learn to play the guitar? You practiced for 6 hours a day. Your fingers bled. Your mother begged you to stop, but you wouldn't. You just kept going." Marcus remembered. He had never become a guitarist. He had given it up after a year when he realized he didn't have the talent. But his father wasn't talking about talent. He was talking about persistence. "I've been thinking about that," David continued, "about how you throw yourself into things. It's always been your way. When you were in high school, you decided you were going to get into a good college, so you studied until 2 a.m. every night. When you got that job in New York, you worked yourself to the bone to prove yourself. And now you're here, sitting in a hospital chair, because you decided you weren't going to let your father die alone." "I wasn't going to let that happen." "I know. That's why I'm proud of you. Not because of your job or your salary or any of that, because of who you are. You're the kind of person who shows up." They were quiet for a moment. Then David said, "Your mother told me you've been going through something, some kind of transformation. She said you've been meeting with a homeless man in a park." Marcus almost laughed. "His name is Leonard. He's not just a homeless man. I don't know what he is. A teacher, a guide, someone who saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself." What did he see? He thought about it. He saw that I was a reactor, that I spent my whole life responding to other people's opinions, other people's moods, other people's expectations. He taught me how to pause, how to choose my responses instead of being controlled by them. David nodded slowly. "That's a good lesson, but it's not the whole lesson, is it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you can pause all you want. You can be calm in the face of anything, but if you don't know who you are underneath the calm, it's just an act. It's just performance. The real confidence, the dangerous kind, comes from knowing your own values, your own boundaries, your own worth. And that's not something Leonard can teach you. That's something you have to discover for yourself." Marcus sat with that. His father was right. The pause was a tool, but a tool without a foundation was useless. He had been so focused on not reacting that he hadn't asked himself the deeper question, what am I reacting to? And why does it have so much power over me? "I don't know if I've discovered that yet," Marcus admitted. "I know I'm not the same person I was a week ago, but I don't know who I'm becoming." David reached out and placed a weak hand on Marcus's arm. "That's okay. You're not supposed to know it yet. You're supposed to be in the middle of it. The becoming is the point, not the destination." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He blinked them back. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too busy reacting to notice." They both laughed. It was a small laugh, quiet so as not to disturb the other patients, but it was real. And in that moment, sitting in a hospital room in Chicago, Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of escape, not the peace of numbness, the peace of presence, the peace of being exactly where he was supposed to be with exactly the person he was supposed to be with, doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. His father fell asleep again. Marcus leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and practiced the pause. He breathed, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. He noticed the sensations in his body, the ache in his lower back, the dryness in his mouth, the heaviness in his earlids. He did not try to change them. He just observed. And then, somewhere between 3 a.m. and dawn, he fell asleep. He woke to the sound of his mother's voice. "Marcus, Marcus, wake up." He opened his eyes. The sun was rising over Chicago, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and pink. His mother was standing over him, holding 2 cups of coffee. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "He made it through the night," she said. "The doctor says he's stable.
They're going to move him to a regular room this afternoon. Marcus took the coffee. He stood up, stretched, and looked at his father, who was still sleeping, his breathing steady, his color better than it had been the night before. "He's going to be okay," Marcus said. It was not a question. His mother nodded. "He's going to be okay. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. The surgeons did the work. You did more than you know. You were here. That's everything." Marcus hugged her. Then he stepped out into the hallway and called Leonard. "It's me. My dad made it. He's going to be okay." "I'm glad. How are you?" Marcus thought about the question. A week ago, he would have said fine or okay or some other word that meant nothing. But now he wanted to be honest. "I'm tired and scared and grateful and confused and 100 other things I can't name. But I'm not falling apart. I'm just feeling it, all of it, without reacting." That's the path. It's not about eliminating emotions. It's about not being ruled by them. You're learning. "When are you coming back to New York?" "Tomorrow. I have to finish the Viridian report. Diane is expecting it on Monday." "Good. Teresa and I will be waiting. There's more to teach you. The pause is just the beginning." Marcus ended the call. He walked back into his father's room, sat down in the plastic chair, and drank his coffee. He watched the sun rise over the Chicago skyline, and he thought about the future, not with anxiety, not with desperation, but with a quiet, steady curiosity. Whatever came next, he would face it, not because he was strong, not because he was confident, but because he had finally learned that he didn't have to react to everything. He could pause, he could breathe, he could choose. And that, he realized, was the most dangerous confidence of all.
Part 8. The Return. Marcus flew back to New York on Sunday afternoon. The flight was delayed by 2 hours, and by the time he landed at LaGuardia, the sun was setting over the city, painting the skyline in shades of orange and purple. He took a taxi to his apartment, dropped off his suitcase, and immediately headed to Union Square. Leonard and Teresa were waiting for him on the same bench. They were sitting closer together than usual, their shoulders touching, and Marcus realized for the first time that they might be more than just friends. He didn't ask. Some things were private. "You look different," Teresa said as he approached. "Not the same person who left 4 days ago." "I feel different," Marcus admitted. He sat down between them. "Being in that hospital, watching my father almost die, it changed something. I can't explain it. It's like I spent my whole life worrying about things that didn't matter, and now I can see which things actually matter, and it's not a long list." Leonard nodded. "That's what crisis does. It strips away the noise. It shows you what's real. The trick is to hold on to that clarity when the crisis is over. Most people don't. They go back to their old patterns. They start reacting again. They forget what they learned." "I don't want to forget," Marcus said. "Then don't." Teresa reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, worn book. It was a copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. She handed it to him. "Read this. It's not self-help. It's a manual for exactly what you're trying to do." The Stoics understood that confidence isn't about being tough, it's about being rational. It's about separating what you can control from what you can't, and then letting go of what you can't. Marcus took the book. He flipped through the pages. He saw underlined passages and notes in the margins, Teresa's handwriting, neat and precise. One passage caught his eye. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." "Thank you," he said. "I'll read it tonight." "Good," Leonard said. "Now tell us about the Viridian report. What's your recommendation?" Marcus took a deep breath. He had been thinking about this for days, turning it over in his mind, weighing the evidence. The science was promising. The team was talented. Julian had made terrible mistakes in the past, but he had also been honest about them, eventually. The question was whether the potential reward was worth the risk. "I'm going to recommend funding, but with conditions. Julian has to agree to an independent board member with veto power over financial decisions. He has to provide quarterly audited financials to all investors, and he has to disclose the NextGen settlement to anyone who puts in more than $1 million. Full transparency, no exceptions. Teresa raised an eyebrow. That's a bold recommendation. Diane might reject it. She might, but it's the right call. The data supports it. The risk is manageable. And Julian deserves a second chance, not because he's a good person, but because the science is real. My job isn't to judge him. My job is to analyze the numbers and make a recommendation. That's what I'm doing. Smile, Leonard. You've changed. The old Marcus would have been too afraid of Diane's reaction to make a bold recommendation. He would have played it safe. He would have said, maybe, or let's wait for more data, or some other non-committal answer. But you're not playing it safe anymore. I'm not, Marcus agreed. I'm playing it true. They sat in silence for a while, watching the park empty as the night grew colder. A street musician started playing a saxophone near the subway entrance, the sound mournful and beautiful. Marcus closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. He did not try to analyze it. He did not try to name the emotions it stirred. He just listened. One more lesson, Leonard said, before you go back to your life. The most important one. Marcus opened his eyes. I'm listening. Reacting to nothing isn't about becoming a robot. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't care. It's about choosing what deserves your energy. Most things don't. Most things are noise. But some things, the things that matter, deserve everything you have. The trick is knowing the difference. How do I know the difference? Marcus asked. You ask yourself one question. Will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, give it your full attention. That's it. That's the whole thing. Marcus thought about the question. He thought about Julian's text messages, Diane's criticism, the coworker who had laughed at him in the meeting. None of it would matter in 5 years. But his father's heart attack, his relationship with his parents, his own growth as a person, those would matter. Those would always matter. Thank you, he said. Both of you. I don't know how to repay you. You already have, Leonard said. By listening, by trying, by showing up. That's all we ever wanted. Marcus stood up. He shook their hands. He hugged Teresa, who stiffened for a moment and then relaxed into it. He hugged Leonard, who smelled of cigarettes and rain and something else, something like hope. Then he walked to the subway, descended into the tunnels, and rode the 6 train home.
Part 9. The Report. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Marcus woke at 5:30 a.m. without an alarm, showered, dressed in his best navy suit, and sat down at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee. In front of him was his laptop, 3 notebooks, and a stack of printed documents. The Viridian report was due by noon. He had written reports before, hundreds of them, but this one was different. This one was not written to please Diane. It was not written to protect his career. It was written to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing held back. He started writing at 6 a.m. By 8, he had completed the executive summary. By 10, he had finished the risk assessment. By 11:30, he had written the recommendation. He proofread it twice, made a few small changes, and then saved the file. The report was 37 pages long. It included detailed financial projections, a thorough analysis of Julian Cross's history, including the NextGen settlement, and a proposed term sheet with the conditions Marcus had discussed with Leonard and Teresa. He sent it to Diane at 11:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the deadline. Then he sat back in his chair and waited. The response came at 12:15 p.m., not an email, a text. My office, 2 p.m., bring your notebooks. Marcus spent the next 2 hours pacing his apartment. He was not anxious, not in the old reactive way, but he was alert, attentive, ready for whatever came next.
He read a few pages of the meditations Teresa had given him. He practiced the pause for 10 minutes. He called his mother, who told him his father was eating solid food for the first time since the surgery. At 1:55 p.m., he walked into the office. The 47th floor was busy as always, analysts hunched over monitors, phones ringing, printers whirring. Marcus walked past his desk without stopping. He went straight to Diane's corner office. The door was open. Diane was sitting behind her desk reading the report. She did not look up when he entered. She just said, "Close the door and sit." He closed the door. He sat. Diane continued reading for another 5 minutes. The silence was heavy, but Marcus did not fill it. He sat with his hands folded in his lap, his breathing steady, his mind calm. He watched the light shift across the windows as clouds moved past the sun. Finally, Diane closed the report. She removed her reading glasses and set them on the desk. She looked at Marcus with an expression he could not read. "You're recommending a conditional yes." "Yes." "You're also recommending that we disclose Julian's fraud settlement to all major investors." "Yes." "And you're recommending an independent board member with veto power." "Yes." Diane leaned back in her chair. She tapped her pen against her desk. Tap, tap, tap. "Do you realize that no one on my team has ever made a recommendation like this? Most analysts are afraid to recommend anything that might make them look bad if it goes wrong. They hedge. They say maybe or proceed with caution or some other mealy-mouthed phrase that covers their ass. But you didn't do that. You took a stand." "I did." "Why?" "Because it's the truth. The science is promising. The team is competent, but Julian has a history of deception, and without safeguards, he could do it again. The conditions protect the investors without killing the deal. It's the right call." Diane stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something Marcus had never seen her do. She smiled. Not a small, tight smile, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. "You've changed," she said. "I don't know what happened to you in the past week, but I like it. The old Marcus would have written a report that said nothing and meant less. This report says something. It says you have a spine." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest, but he did not let it show on his face. He simply said, "Thank you. I'm going to approve your recommendation, but I'm putting you in charge of the implementation. You'll oversee the due diligence, negotiate the term sheet, and manage the relationship with Julian. If he so much as sneezes in the wrong direction, you'll report it to me directly. Do you accept?" Marcus did not hesitate. "Yes." "Good. Now get out of my office. You have work to do." Marcus stood up. He walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Diane spoke again. "Marcus." He turned. "I'm glad you didn't reply to that text." He smiled. "Me too." Part 10. The Negotiation. The negotiation with Julian took place 3 days later in the same conference room in Gowanus. But this time everything was different. Julian was not aggressive. He was not defensive. He was quiet, almost subdued, as if the confession had drained something out of him. Marcus sat across from him, flanked by a junior associate named Sarah Chen, no relation to his family, just a coincidence, and a lawyer from the firm's legal department. On the table was the term sheet Marcus had drafted, 30 pages of conditions, safeguards, and reporting requirements. Julian read it in silence. When he finished, he looked up at Marcus. "This is aggressive." "It's protective," Marcus said, "for both of us. If Viridian succeeds, these conditions won't matter. You'll have more money than you know what to do with, and you'll be too busy to care about board meetings. If Viridian fails, these conditions ensure that no one can accuse you of fraud. It's a win-win." Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're not the same person who walked into my office a week ago." "No," Marcus agreed. "I'm not." "What changed?" "I learned to stop reacting.
I learned to pause. I learned to ask myself what matters and what doesn't. Most things don't, but this deal matters, so I'm giving it my full attention." Julian nodded slowly. He picked up a pen. He signed the term sheet. Then he looked up at Marcus and said, "I'm sorry for the text messages, for trying to intimidate you. I was scared. I thought if I could control you, I could control the outcome, but I was wrong." Marcus accepted the signed term sheet. He stood up. He extended his hand. "Apology accepted. Now let's get to work." Marcus went back to Union Square that evening. He wanted to tell Leonard and Teresa the news, that the deal was done, that Diane had approved his recommendation, and that he was being promoted to lead the Viridian account. But when he reached the bench, Leonard was not there. The milk crate was gone. The spot where he usually sat was empty. Marcus looked around. He checked the usual places, the subway entrance, the fountain, the statue of Gandhi. Nothing. He called Leonard's number. It went straight to voicemail. He called Teresa. No answer. He sat on the bench and waited. An hour passed, then 2. The park emptied. The street musicians packed up and left. The temperature dropped, and Marcus pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. At 9 p.m. his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Leonard asked me to give you this message. He's gone. He checked into a shelter in the Bronx. He said you don't need him anymore. He said you're ready. T." Marcus read the message 3 times. His first instinct was to react, to call Teresa, to demand answers, to track Leonard down and tell him he was wrong, that he still needed him. But he paused. He breathed. He asked himself the question Teresa had taught him. Will this matter in 5 years? The answer was yes. Leonard mattered. Their friendship mattered. But the need to chase him, to force him to stay, to react with desperation, that was old Marcus. That was the reactor. The new Marcus sat on the bench. He felt the sadness. He let it move through him. And then he stood up, walked to the subway, and went home. He sent Leonard one final text. "Thank you for everything. I'll make you proud." There was no reply.
Part 12. The New Normal. The weeks that followed were busy. Marcus threw himself into the Viridian project, working alongside Julian and his team to prepare for the public offering. He flew to Chicago twice to visit his father, who was recovering well. He called his mother every Sunday. He practiced the pause every morning and every night. He also started reading the meditations, not quickly, but slowly, one passage at a time, letting the words sink in. He underlined sentences that spoke to him. He wrote his own reflections in the margins. He began to understand what Teresa had meant when she said the Stoics had figured this out 2,000 years ago. One passage in particular stayed with him. "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." He thought about the quality of his thoughts. For years they had been dominated by fear, by insecurity, by the desperate need for approval. But slowly, gradually, those thoughts were being replaced by something else. Curiosity, patience, a quiet, unshakable sense of his own worth. He was not perfect. He still reacted sometimes. A rude comment from a stranger could still sting. A missed deadline could still spike his anxiety. But the reactions were smaller now, shorter, easier to observe and release. One evening, he was walking home from the subway when he saw a commotion on the sidewalk. A man was yelling at a woman, something about a parking spot, a misunderstanding, a minor insult that had spiraled out of control. The woman was yelling back. A crowd was gathering. Phones were recording. Marcus watched for a moment. He felt the old pull, the urge to intervene, to take sides, to say something that would make him feel useful. But he paused. He breathed. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? No. He walked around the commotion and continued home. He did not feel guilty. He did not feel cowardly. He felt free. Part 13. The Letter. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter. It was handwritten, on cheap paper, with a return address from a shelter in the Bronx. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Dear Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm probably not around anymore. Not dead, just gone. I move around, it's what I do. But I wanted you to have this before I disappeared. You asked me once why I was helping you. I said it was because someone helped me once. That was true. But there's more to it. I helped you because I saw myself in you. The fear, the desperation, the way you crumbled under the weight of other people's opinions. I was you 30 years ago, and I failed. I didn't learn the lessons I'm teaching you. I learned them too late, after I had already lost everything. You're not going to fail. I can see it in you. You have something I never had, a willingness to change, a willingness to sit with discomfort, a willingness to be honest about your own weaknesses. Keep practicing the pause. Keep reading the books. Keep asking yourself what matters. And remember, the mountain doesn't flinch. But the mountain also doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. You're ready. End. P.S. Teresa says hello. She also says you should call your mother more often. Marcus folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer of his nightstand, next to the copy of the Meditations. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked out the window at the city lights. He thought about Leonard, where he was, whether he was safe, whether he would ever see him again. He felt the sadness, the gratitude, the loss, and then he let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because holding on to it wouldn't change anything. He picked up his phone. He called his mother. "Hey, Mom, just checking in." They talked for 20 minutes, about his father's recovery, about her new hobby, painting, something she had always wanted to try but never had the time for, about the weather in Chicago and the price of groceries and the neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking. When he hung up, he felt something he had not felt in a long time: contentment. Part 14. The Promotion. 6 months after his father's heart attack, Marcus was promoted to vice president. The promotion came with a corner office, a significant raise, and a team of analysts that reported directly to him. Diane made the announcement at a company-wide meeting, and for a moment Marcus felt the old urge, the need to downplay his achievement, to deflect credit, to say something self-deprecating that would make everyone feel comfortable. But he didn't. He stood up, thanked Diane, thanked his team, and sat back down. No speech, no performance, just a simple acknowledgement of the work that had been done. After the meeting, Diane pulled him aside. "You're different," she said. "I've been watching you for 6 months. You don't get flustered anymore. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize for things that aren't your fault. What's your secret?" I smiled. "I learned to react to nothing." Diane raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous." "I know." She laughed. It was the first time she had ever heard her laugh. "Good. Keep it up. I have big plans for you." That night, Marcus went to Union Square. He sat on the bench where he had first met Leonard. He watched the skateboarders, the dog walkers, the couples holding hands. He thought about how different his life was now compared to a year ago. He had a promotion, a growing sense of purpose, and a relationship with his parents that was stronger than ever. But more than that, he had something he had never had before: peace. Not the peace of escape, the peace of presence. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled to Leonard's number, still saved, still unanswered. He typed a message. "Got promoted today. VP. Thought you should know. Hope you're okay. Marcus." He did not expect a reply, but one came 3 hours later from a different number. "Knew you would. Keep going. L." Marcus smiled. He put the phone away. He stood up, walked to the subway, and went home. Part 15. The Mountain. 1 year after his first meeting with Leonard, Marcus stood on the roof of his apartment building, watching the sun rise over the East River. The sky was a gradient of pink and orange, the city below still half asleep, the air cold and clean. He thought about the journey, the subway platform, the conference room, the hospital, the negotiations, the letter. He thought about all the moments when he had wanted to react, and all the moments when he had chosen to pause. He was not the same person. He would never be the same person. The old Marcus, the reactor, the people-pleaser, the man who lived in fear of other people's opinions, was gone. In his place was someone quieter, someone steadier, someone who knew what mattered and what didn't. He thought about Leonard's words, "The mountain doesn't flinch." He looked at the city that tried to break him, the city that made him feel small and weak and worthless, and he felt nothing but gratitude. Because the city had also given him Leonard, it had given him Teresa, it had given him the opportunity to change. His phone buzzed, a message from Diane. "Viridian just got FDA approved. Julian wants to celebrate. Drinks at 7. You're buying." Marcus typed a reply, "I'll be there." Then he put the phone away. He stood on the roof, breathing the cold air, feeling the sun on his face. He did not check his email. He did not rehearse conversations. He did not worry about what anyone thought of him. He just was. And that, the simple, unshakable fact of being, was the most dangerous confidence of all. Let's begin. Part 16. The celebration that almost broke him. The bar was called The Roof, at the top of a hotel in the financial district, and it was the kind of place where a single cocktail cost more than Marcus used to spend on groceries for a week. Julian had reserved a private corner overlooking the harbor, and by the time Marcus arrived at 7:05 p.m., the champagne was already flowing. Diane was there, dressed in a silver blouse that made her look almost approachable. Julian was there, laughing with Sarah Chen and a few of the Viridian scientists. And Teresa was there. Marcus almost didn't recognize her without her leather jacket. She wore a simple black dress and stood near the railing, watching the Statue of Liberty glow in the distance. Marcus walked over to her. "You came?" Teresa shrugged. "Leonard said I should. He said you might need a reminder tonight." "A reminder of what?" "That success is the hardest test of all. It's easy to be calm when you have nothing to lose. It's much harder when you have everything to gain." Marcus thought about that. He had been so focused on surviving the crisis, his father's heart attack, Julian's threats, Diane's scrutiny, that he hadn't considered what would happen when things started going right. Would he stay grounded, or would the old reactivity return in a new form? Diane raised her glass. A toast, to Viridian, to FDA approval, and to the man who made it possible, Marcus Reed. Everyone cheered. Marcus felt the heat rise to his cheeks. The old Marcus would have deflected. "Oh, it was a team effort. I couldn't have done it without you." But the new Marcus simply raised his glass and said, "To the team." Julian clapped him on the back. "You earned this, Marcus. You really did." His voice was genuine. The aggression was gone. In its place was something that looked like gratitude. The night wore on. More champagne, laughter, stories. At one point, Sarah Chen pulled Marcus aside and said, "I want to learn what you did, how you stayed so calm when Julian was yelling, how you got Diane to trust you. Can you teach me?" Marcus looked at her. She was 26, bright, ambitious, and terrified of making mistakes. He saw himself in her. "It's not about staying calm," he said. "It's about reacting to nothing. You pause, you breathe, you ask yourself if it will matter in 5 years. Most things won't. The ones that do, you give them everything." Sarah nodded. "Can you teach me?" "Meet me in Union Square on Saturday. I'll introduce you to someone." At 11 p.m., the party began to wind down. Diane left first, then Julian, then the scientists. Marcus found Teresa still standing by the railing. "Walk me to the subway?" he asked. They walked in silence through the cool night air. The streets were mostly empty. A homeless man slept in a doorway. A taxi idled at the curb. When they reached the subway entrance, Teresa stopped. "Leonard is proud of you, but he's also worried." "Worried about what?" "That you'll forget, that you'll get comfortable, that you'll stop practicing the pause. Success is the seductive test. It makes you think you figured everything out. That's when people fall." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to say that he would never forget, that he was different now, that Leonard had nothing to worry about. But he paused. He breathed. And he realized she was right. He had been feeling invincible. And invincibility was just another form of reactivity, the ego's way of reacting to praise. "Thank you," he said. "I needed to hear that." Teresa nodded. "That's why I came." She descended into the subway. Marcus stood at the entrance for a long moment, watching the lights flicker below. Then he walked home, took out his copy of the Meditations, and read for an hour before bed. He underlined a new passage. "You have the power to strip away many superfluous troubles located wholly in your judgment, and to possess a large room for yourself, embracing in thought the whole cosmos, to consider everlasting time, to think of the rapid change in each thing, how short it is from birth until dissolution, and how the void before birth and that after dissolution are equally infinite." He closed the book. He turned off the light. But sleep did not come easily, because in the darkness a new fear began to take shape, not the old fear of failure, but a stranger, more insidious fear. What if I succeed and I still feel empty? Part 17. The Ghost of Future Failure. The next morning, Marcus woke at 5:30 as usual. He showered, dressed, and sat down with his coffee and his journal. He had started journaling 3 months ago, at Leonard's suggestion. Every morning he wrote 3 things. One thing he was grateful for, one thing he was afraid of, and one thing he would do that day to practice non-reaction. That morning he wrote, "Grateful, Viridian's FDA approval. Afraid, that I will become the person I used to be. Practice, when Julian calls with good news, I will not let excitement control me. I will pause." His phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. Julian. "Marcus, did you see the news? We're up 40% in pre-market trading. This is huge. We're going to be the biggest biotech IPO of the decade." Marcus felt the surge of excitement, the old reactive high that came from external validation. His heart raced, his mind flooded with images of bonuses, promotions, recognition. He wanted to cheer, he wanted to call his mother, he wanted to post something on social media. But he paused. He breathed. He counted to 5. "That's great, Julian," he said, his voice steady. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The real work starts now. We need to make sure the manufacturing scales properly, and we need to keep an eye on the competition." There was a pause on the other end. Then Julian laughed. "You really don't react to anything, do you?" "I try not to. That's why you're good at this. Most people would be jumping up and down. You're already thinking about the next problem. I respect that." They talked for another 10 minutes about logistics, then hung up. Marcus set down the phone and looked at his journal. He had done it. He had practiced non-reaction in real time. But something felt off. The excitement was still there, buried beneath the calm. And he knew that if he kept burying it, it would eventually explode. He called Leonard. No answer. He called Teresa. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Everything okay?" "I don't know. I'm doing everything right. The pause, the journaling, the reading. But I feel disconnected, like I'm watching myself from the outside. Is that normal?" Teresa was quiet for a moment. "Yes and no. The pause is a tool. It's not supposed to be a wall. If you're using it to avoid feeling things, you're doing it wrong. The goal isn't to become numb. It's to choose when and how to feel. Sometimes the right response is to celebrate. Sometimes it's to grieve. The pause gives you the space to decide. It doesn't tell you to always choose silence." Marcus wrote that down in his journal. Feeling is internal. Reaction is external. "Thank you, Teresa. I think I needed to hear that." "You're welcome. Now go to work. You have a company to run."
14. He went to work. The office was buzzing with news of Viridian's stock surge. People congratulated him in the hallway. His team looked at him with new respect and a little fear. He sat in his corner office, looking out at the city, and allowed himself to feel the pride. He did not suppress it. He did not act on it. He just let it sit there, warm and quiet, like a sunbeam on his chest. Then he got to work. He had a report to write, a board meeting to prepare for, and a young analyst named Sarah to mentor. Life, he was learning, did not stop for self-improvement. It kept coming, and his job was to keep showing up. That evening, he went to Union Square. He sat on the bench. He did not call Leonard. He did not text Teresa. He just sat, watching the city move around him, feeling the cold air on his face, and practicing the simplest form of presence, being exactly where he was, without wishing to be anywhere else. Part 18. The Lesson of the Broken Elevator. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself trapped in an elevator. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and he was on his way to a meeting with Julian when the car lurched to a stop between the 14th and 15th floors. The lights flickered, then died. Emergency backup lights came on, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Marcus pressed the alarm button. Nothing happened. He tried his phone. No signal. He was alone, suspended in a metal box, with no way out and no idea how long it would take for someone to find him. His first instinct was panic. His heart slammed against his ribs. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He thought about the news stories, people trapped for hours, days even. He thought about the air running out. He thought about never seeing his parents again. And then he paused. He sat down on the floor of the elevator. He closed his eyes. He breathed. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The panic did not disappear, but it became something he could observe, like a storm passing over a mountain. He was the mountain, the wind was the panic. The wind screamed, but the mountain did not move. He opened his eyes. He looked around the elevator. There was a maintenance panel with a small keyhole. There was an emergency phone that didn't work. There was a sticker with a maintenance phone number. He memorized the number in case he got signal. Then he waited. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. He used the time to practice the pause. He thought about his father in the hospital. He thought about Leonard on the milk crate. He thought about all the moments that had led him here, to a broken elevator, sitting on the floor, calm in the face of uncertainty. At the 45-minute mark, the elevator lurched again. The lights came back on. The doors opened onto the 15th floor where a maintenance worker was standing with a crowbar and a confused expression. "You okay in there, buddy?" Marcus stood up. He brushed off his pants. "I'm fine, thank you." He walked to Julian's office. He was 15 minutes late. Julian looked up from his desk. "You okay? You look pale." "Elevator got stuck." "For how long?" 45 minutes. Julian's eyes widened. "And you're just standing there? Not screaming, not crying, not calling a lawyer?" Marcus shrugged. What would that accomplish? Julian stared at him. Then he shook his head. "You really are different. Most people would be a wreck. You look like you just got back from a meditation retreat. I've had good teachers." The meeting went well. Julian had new data from the manufacturing scale-up, and Marcus asked the right questions. Not aggressive, not passive, just curious. By the end, they had a plan for the next quarter. Julian walked him to the elevator, the same elevator. "You sure you want to take that again?" Julian asked. Marcus stepped inside. "It's just an elevator. It did its job once. It will do it again." The doors closed. The elevator descended smoothly to the lobby. Marcus walked out into the afternoon sun, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He had faced a genuine fear, not a social slight or work criticism, but a real primal fear of being trapped. And he had not reacted. He had paused. He breathed. He waited. And he had survived. That night, he wrote in his journal, "The elevator was a gift. It showed me that I can handle more than I think. The mountain doesn't just sit there when the wind blows. The mountain endures." He sent a text to Leonard. "Got stuck in an elevator for 45 minutes today. Didn't panic. Thought of you." An hour later, Leonard replied, "Good. Now do it again tomorrow. Not the elevator, the non-reaction. Every day, forever." Marcus smiled. He turned off the light, and for the first time in a long time, he slept without dreaming. Part 19. The Confrontation with the Past. 6 months after the elevator incident, Marcus received an email that made his blood run cold. The sender was Todd Hemmings, the manager from Chicago who had tormented him a decade ago. The subject line was, "Long time no see." The email read, "Marcus, heard you're a big shot now. VP at a hedge fund, running a biotech IPO. Impressive. I'm in New York for a conference. Drinks? Would love to catch up. My treat. Todd." Marcus stared at the screen. The old anger rose in his chest, hot, familiar, suffocating. He remembered the conference room, the 20-minute critique, the bathroom stall, the years of Todd's errand boy. Every instinct screamed at him to reply with a furious message, to tell Todd exactly what he thought of him, to finally have his revenge. He paused. He closed the laptop, he walked to the window and looked out at the city. He breathed. He asked himself the question, will this matter in 5 years? The answer surprised him. Yes, not because Todd mattered, but because the unresolved anger mattered. He had been carrying Todd around in his head for a decade, and he had never truly let go. He had thought that becoming dangerously confident meant rising above it, ignoring it, pretending it didn't hurt, but that wasn't true. Real confidence meant facing it. He opened the laptop. He typed a reply. "Todd, I remember you. I remember everything, but I'm not the person I was then. I don't need a drink. I don't need an apology. I just need you to know that what you did, the manipulation, the exploitation, the way you broke down a young analyst to build yourself up, was wrong. I've spent 10 years recovering from you, and I'm done. Don't contact me again. Marcus." He sent it before he could second-guess himself. Then he closed the laptop and sat in silence. An hour later, a reply came. "Marcus, you're right. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I've been in therapy for 3 years. I'm not the person I was either. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. I won't contact you again. Todd." Marcus read the message 3 times. He felt the anger shift, not disappear, but transform into something else, something like pity. Todd was a broken man trying to fix himself. That didn't excuse what he had done, but it meant that Marcus no longer had to carry the weight of hatred. He deleted the email thread. He did not reply. He did not tell anyone what had happened. Not Leonard, not Teresa, not his mother. He simply let it go. That night he wrote in his journal, "Closure is something you give yourself."
That night, he wrote in his journal, "Closure is not something someone gives you. It's something you give yourself." Part 20. The Wedding. 2 years after his first meeting with Leonard, Marcus received an unexpected invitation. Julian was getting married to a woman named Elena, a biochemist he had met at a conference in Switzerland. The wedding was to be held at a vineyard in the Hudson Valley, and Marcus was invited as a guest, not as an analyst, not as a business partner, as a friend. He RSVP'd yes. The day of the wedding was golden, late September, the leaves just beginning to turn, the air crisp and clean. Marcus drove upstate in a rented car, wearing a charcoal suit and a tie that matched the autumn colors. He arrived early, walked through the vineyard, and found Julian standing alone near the altar, looking nervous. "Hey, you okay?" Julian turned. His face was pale. "What if she says no? What if I mess up the vows? What if—" Marcus put a hand on Julian's shoulder. "Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years?" Julian laughed. "You and your questions." "It works." Julian took a deep breath, then another. "Okay, I'm okay. Thank you." The ceremony was beautiful. Elena said yes. There was dancing, toasts, and a cake that cost more than Marcus's first car. Near the end of the night, Julian pulled Marcus aside. "I want you to know something," Julian said. "You saved my company. But more than that, you saved me. You showed me that a person can change, that past mistakes don't have to define the future. I'm not the same man who hid data and threatened analysts. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying, and I owe that to you." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. "You don't owe me anything. You did the work." "I did the work because you gave me a reason to, because you treated me like a human being instead of a fraud. That matters." They hugged. It was awkward. 2 men who had spent most of their relationship in conference rooms negotiating term sheets, but it was real. On the drive back to the city, Marcus thought about the journey. He had started as a reactor, desperate for approval, crumbling under criticism. He had become a man who could face a bully, a hospital, a broken elevator, and an old tormentor, and not break. He had become dangerously confident. But he also knew that the journey was not over. It would never be over. Every day would bring new tests, new triggers, new opportunities to react or to pause. He was ready. Part 21. The student becomes the teacher. Sarah Chan showed up at Union Square on a Saturday morning, just as Marcus had instructed. She was wearing jeans and a Columbia hoodie, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nervous. "This is where you learned?" she asked, looking around at the skateboarders, the vendors, the tourists. "This is where it started," Marcus said. He led her to the bench where he had first sat with Leonard. "Sit." She sat. He sat beside her. "I'm going to tell you a story. It's about a man who had everything, a good job, a nice apartment, a future, but who was miserable because he reacted to everything. A rude comment would ruin his day. A critical email would send him into a spiral. He lived in fear of other people's opinions. And then he met a homeless man with a harmonica who taught him how to pause." Sarah listened. Marcus told her about Leonard, about Theresa, about the pause, about the question. He told her about his father's heart attack, about Julian's confession, about the elevator, about Todd's email. He held nothing back. When he finished, Sarah's eyes were wide. "That's a lot." "It is, and it's not easy, but it's simple. You pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, you let it go. If the answer is yes, you give it your full attention. That's it." "And that's everything?" "That's everything." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can you teach me the pause?" Marcus smiled. "I can show you, but you have to practice. Every day, morning and night, no excuses." "I will." They spent the next hour practicing. Marcus guided her through the breathing. He asked her to think of a situation that triggered her, a critical boss, a dismissive colleague, a friend who didn't text back, and to notice the physical sensations in her body. He taught her to observe without reacting. By the end, Sarah looked different. Not calm exactly, but curious. "I think I get it. It's not about not feeling, it's about not being controlled by the feeling." "Exactly." "Thank you, Marcus. I won't let you down." "You won't. But even if you do, that's okay. The point is to keep trying." They stood up. Sarah hugged him, a quick, awkward hug, and then walked toward the subway. Marcus sat back down on the bench. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Leonard. "I just taught someone the pause. She's young, smart, reminds me of me. You started something, Leonard. It's not going to end with me." 3 dots appeared. Then, "That's the point. Keep going." Marcus put the phone away. He watched the city move around him, the chaos, the noise, the endless stream of triggers and reactions, and he felt, not detachment, but something better, connection. He was part of this city, part of this chaos, and he no longer needed to react to it. He could simply be in it. Part 22. The setback. 6 months into mentoring Sarah, Marcus hit a wall. It was a Thursday afternoon, and he was in a meeting with Diane and the rest of the executive team. The topic was a new investment opportunity, a renewable energy startup with a charismatic founder and questionable financials. Marcus had done the due diligence. He had found red flags. He had recommended against funding. But the rest of the team disagreed. They saw the founder's charm, the flashy presentation, the potential for huge returns. They argued. They pushed. And Marcus, for the first time in years, felt the old reactivity rising. "You're being too conservative, Marcus. You're always too conservative. That's why you're still a VP while the rest of us are making partner." The words hit like a slap. His face flushed, his jaw tightened. The old familiar urge to defend himself, to explain, to justify, it was overwhelming. He paused. He breathed. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? The answer was yes, not because Robert's opinion mattered, but because the decision mattered.
If the firm invested in a bad deal, people would lose money, jobs would be at risk. That was real. So he did not react to the insult. He did not defend his title or competence. Instead, he said, "Robert, you're welcome to question my judgment, but the data is clear. This company has a 70% chance of failure within 2 years. I've put the analysis in the appendix. If you want to ignore it, that's your choice, but I'm putting my recommendation in writing." The room went silent. Diane looked at Marcus, then at Robert. "I want to see the analysis. Marcus, stay after. Everyone else, out." When the room was empty, Diane leaned back in her chair. "You handled that well." "I handled it." "Robert is an ass. Everyone knows it. But he's also powerful. You just made an enemy." Marcus shrugged. "I made a recommendation. If that makes me an enemy, so be it." Diane studied him. "You really don't care what people think, do you?" "I care what you think, and what the data thinks. The rest is noise." Diane nodded slowly. "I'm going to read your analysis tonight. If you're right, I'll back you. If you're wrong, you'll have some explaining to do." "Fair enough."
16. If you're right, I'll back you. If you're wrong, you'll have some explaining to do. Fair enough. Marcus left the meeting and walked to his office. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was still coursing through him. He had not reacted to Robert's insult, but the effort had cost him. He felt drained. He called Teresa. "I just stood up to a senior partner. He insulted me. I didn't react, but I feel awful." "That's normal," Teresa said. "Non-reaction doesn't mean no cost. It means you choose the cost. You chose to stand by the data instead of defending your ego. That's brave, but it's also exhausting. Go home, rest. Tomorrow will be easier." Marcus went home. He did not check his email. He did not rehearse the conversation. He made tea, read the meditations, and went to bed at 9 p.m. The next morning, Diane sent an email to the whole team. "After reviewing Marcus's analysis, I've decided to pass on the renewable energy deal. The risks outweigh the potential rewards. Thank you, Marcus, for your thorough work." Robert did not apologize. He did not acknowledge Marcus in the hallway. But Marcus didn't need his approval. He had done his job. He had told the truth, and the truth had won. Part 23. The Reunion. 3 years after his first meeting with Leonard, Marcus received a phone call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to. "Hello?" "Leonard. It's Leonard." Marcus's heart stopped. "Leonard? Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm in New York for one night. I wanted to see you. Can you come to Union Square? The bench? 7 p.m. I'll be there." Marcus left work early. He changed into jeans and a sweater. He took the subway to Union Square, his heart pounding the whole way. He hadn't seen Leonard in over 2 years. He had sent messages, received cryptic replies, but never known where he was or what he was doing. When he arrived, Leonard was sitting on the bench. He looked older, thinner. His beard was longer and his army jacket was more faded, but his eyes were the same, sharp, clear, seeing everything. Marcus sat down beside him. They didn't hug. They just sat. "You look good," Leonard said. "I feel good, most of the time." "Most of the time is enough." They sat in silence for a while, watching the park. The sun was setting. The street musicians were packing up. A group of teenagers were laughing near the fountain. "I've been thinking about you, wondering if you were alive, wondering if I'd ever see you again." "I'm alive, barely, sometimes, but alive." He pulled out a cigarette and lit it. He offered one to Marcus. Marcus shook his head. "I quit." "Good for you." Leonard took a long drag. "I came back because I'm sick. Cancer. Stage 4. They gave me 6 months, maybe less. I wanted to see you before I go." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He felt the grief rise in his chest, hot, crushing, unbearable. He wanted to cry. He wanted to scream. He wanted to ask why. Why now? Why Leonard? Why anyone? He paused. He breathed. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? Yes, it would matter forever. So he let himself feel. He did not suppress the grief. He did not try to be strong. He just sat there next to Leonard and let the tears come. Leonard put a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. I've had a good life. Not the life I planned, but a good life. I helped you. That matters. It matters more than you know." They sat until the park emptied. They talked about everything and nothing, about Marcus's promotion, about Sarah, about Julian's wedding, about Teresa, who was living in a small apartment in Brooklyn and working as a peer counselor. They talked about the pause, about the mountain, about the question. And when the night grew cold, Leonard stood up. "I have to go. My shelter has a curfew." Marcus stood up. "Can I visit you? Can I help?" Leonard shook his head. "This is goodbye, Marcus. I'm not going to drag this out. I wanted to see you one last time. I've seen you. Now I can go." Marcus felt the tears come again. But he did not argue. He did not plead. He simply said, "Thank you for everything. I'll make sure your lessons live on." Leonard smiled. It was the same smile Marcus remembered the first night, sad, but with a flicker of hope. "I know you will." He turned and walked towards the subway. Marcus watched him go. When Leonard reached the stairs, he paused. He looked back. He raised a hand. Then he disappeared. Marcus stood alone in the empty park. He felt the grief. He let it move through him. And then he walked home, took out his journal, and wrote, "Leonard is dying, but what he gave me will never die. I will teach others. I will practice every day. I will be the mountain. Not because I'm strong, because he showed me how." Part 24. The Funeral. Leonard died 6 weeks later. Teresa called Marcus with the news. There was no funeral, no service, no obituary. He had left instructions. He wanted to be cremated, his ashes scattered in Union Square near the bench where he had spent so many hours. Marcus and Teresa stood in the park on a gray November morning. The bench was empty. The skateboarders were elsewhere. Teresa held a small cardboard box. Inside were Leonard's ashes. "He would have hated this," Teresa said, "all this sentiment." "He would have hated it," Marcus agreed, "but he would have understood." Teresa opened the box. Together they scattered the ashes into the wind. The gray dust swirled for a moment, then disappeared. Marcus pulled out his phone. He had written something the night before, a short eulogy. He read it aloud. "Leonard is dying, but what he gave me will never die. I will teach others. I will practice every day. I will be the mountain. Not because I'm strong, because he showed me how." Teresa was crying. Marcus put an arm around her. "What now?" she asked. "Now we keep going. We practice, we teach, we live the way he taught us to live. Not perfectly, but persistently." They stood in silence for a long time. Then they walked to a diner, ordered coffee, and talked about Leonard, the good, the bad, the ugly. They laughed, they cried, they remembered. That night Marcus went home and wrote a letter to Sarah. He told her about Leonard's death. He told her that the lessons were more important now than ever, and he told her that she was part of something bigger than herself, a chain of teaching that stretched back to people she would never meet. He ended the letter with Leonard's favorite words, "React to nothing, but feel everything." Part 25. The Mountain Speaks. 5 years after his first meeting with Leonard, Marcus stood on the roof of his apartment building watching the sun rise over the East River. He was 40 years old. His hair had a few strands of gray. His face had new lines, but his eyes were calm. He thought about the journey, the subway platform, the conference room, the hospital, the elevator, the wedding, the funeral. He thought about all the moments when he had wanted to react, and all the moments when he had chosen to pause. He was not the same person. He would never be the same person. The old Marcus, the reactor, the people-pleaser, the man who lived in fear of other people's opinions, was gone. In his place was someone quieter, someone steadier, someone who knew what mattered and what didn't. His phone buzzed.
A message from Sarah. I just taught the pause to a new analyst. She's terrified. She's perfect. You started something, Marcus. It's not going to end with me. Marcus smiled. He typed a reply. That's the point. Keep going.
Marcus smiled. He typed a reply. That's the point. Keep going. He put the phone away. He looked at the city that had tried to break him, the city that had made him feel small and weak and worthless. And he felt nothing but gratitude, because the city had given him Leonard. It had given him Teresa. It had given him Sarah. It had given him the opportunity to change. The wind picked up. The city below began to stir. Somewhere a car horn honked. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere a man was sitting on a milk crate, playing a harmonica, waiting for someone who needed to hear the truth. Marcus closed his eyes. He breathed. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. He felt the sun on his face. He felt the cold air in his lungs. He felt the grief, the gratitude, the love, the loss, all of it moving through him like a river. He did not react. He did not suppress. He simply was. And that, the simple, unshakable fact of being, was the most dangerous confidence of all. He opened his eyes. He turned away from the railing. He walked back inside, made a cup of coffee, and sat down at his desk. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But he was no longer in a hurry. He was no longer afraid. He was the mountain. And the mountain does not flinch. Part 26. The Price of Peace. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 months after Leonard's ashes had scattered across Union Square. Marcus was sitting in his corner office reviewing Sarah's latest risk assessment when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your mentor wasn't who you thought he was. Meet me at the diner on 14th Street, 6 p.m. Come alone. Marcus stared at the screen. His first instinct was to delete it. Spam, a prank, someone trying to provoke him. But something about the tone made him pause. The words were too specific. Your mentor. Only a handful of people knew about Leonard. He called Teresa. She picked up on the second ring. Someone just texted me about Leonard. Said he wasn't who I thought he was. Wants to meet tonight. Teresa was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I was afraid this would happen. Afraid of what? Leonard had a past, a real past, before the shelters, before the harmonica, before he became the man you knew. He wasn't always a teacher. He was other things, things he was ashamed of. He told me once that if anyone ever came looking for him after he was gone, I should warn you to stay away. Who would come looking? People he hurt, people he owed money, people who thought he got off too easy. Teresa's voice was tight. Marcus, you don't have to go to this meeting. You don't owe Leonard anything. He's gone. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He looked out the window at the gray sky. He could feel the old pull, the need to know, to defend Leonard's memory, to prove that he wasn't afraid. But he paused. He breathed. He asked himself the question, will this matter in 5 years? Yes, because Leonard's legacy mattered. And if there was a truth about Leonard that he didn't know, he needed to face it. Not react to it, but face it with open eyes. I'm going, said Marcus. Not because I'm afraid, because I want to know who Leonard really was, the good and the bad. Teresa sighed. Then I'm coming with you. Not inside, but nearby. If anything goes wrong, you text me a single letter. X. I'll call the police. Deal. At 6 p.m., Marcus walked into the diner on 14th Street. It was an old-school place. Red vinyl booths, a long counter, the smell of coffee and frying bacon. A man was sitting in the corner booth facing the door. He was in his 50s with a shaved head, a black leather jacket, and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheek. He looked like someone who had spent a lot of time in places where people didn't ask questions. He slid into the booth across from him. You wanted to see me. The man studied Marcus for a long moment. Then he said, You look like him. Not physically, but the eyes. Leonard had those eyes, the calm, the watching. Who are you? Name's Victor. I used to do business with Leonard, back when he had a different name, a different life. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes, then remembered he was in a diner and put them away. You know about the money? What money? Victor leaned back. Leonard didn't just lose his family and his job because he was reactive. He lost them because he stole. $300,000 from a construction company he was supposed to be auditing. He gambled it away in a weekend. Then he ran. His wife divorced him. His kids changed their last name. He spent 5 years in prison for fraud. When he got out, he was homeless. That's when he found the harmonica. That's when he started pretending he was some kind of guru. Marcus felt the words hit him like stones. Leonard, the man who had taught him about honesty, about facing the truth, about being a mountain, was a thief, a gambler, a con man. He felt the anger rise, the betrayal, the urge to deny it, to defend Leonard, to walk out. He paused. He breathed. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? Yes, because the truth about Leonard mattered, but not the way Victor thought. Leonard's past didn't erase what he taught Marcus. If anything, it made the lessons more powerful. Leonard wasn't a saint. He was a broken man who had tried to make himself better, and he helped Marcus do the same. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. His voice was steady. Victor shrugged. Because I'm the one he stole from. The construction company was mine. I ruined me. I lost my business, my marriage, my house. I spent 10 years rebuilding, and when I found out he was dead, I wanted someone to know the truth, someone who looked up to him. Marcus nodded slowly. I appreciate your honesty, but it doesn't change anything. Victor's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Leonard was a flawed man. He made terrible mistakes. He hurt people. But he also spent the last years of his life trying to help others. He saved me. He saved Teresa. He saved people you'll never meet. That doesn't erase what he did to you, but it also doesn't erase what he became. Victor stared at him. Then he laughed, a short, bitter laugh. You really are like him. That calm, that refusal to react. He would have been proud. I hope so. Victor stood up. He threw a $20 bill on the table. I'm not going to bother you again. I just needed someone to know. That's all. He walked out. Marcus sat in the booth for a long time, staring at the coffee cup. He felt the grief again, not for the Leonard that he had imagined, but for the real Leonard, the flawed, broken, beautiful man who had tried to become something better. He texted Teresa, "It's done. I'm okay. Meet me at the bench." They sat in Union Square until midnight, talking about Leonard. Teresa told him things she had never shared, about Leonard's prison years, about the night he almost killed himself, about the slow, painful process of becoming a teacher. By the end, Marcus understood. Leonard's past was not a contradiction. It was the foundation. He had been a reactor, just like Marcus. He had lost everything, and then he'd rebuilt himself from nothing. He never wanted anyone to know, said Teresa. He was ashamed. He shouldn't be. His past made him who he was, the same way my past made me who I am. We don't have to be proud of our mistakes, but we don't have to hide from them either. Teresa squeezed his hand. You really are his legacy. Marcus looked up at the stars, faint through the city lights, but there. I'm trying to be.
Marcus looked up at the stars, faint through the city lights, but there. I'm trying to be. Part 27. The Test of Fire. 2 weeks after the meeting with Victor, Marcus received a call from Diane. Her voice was different, tight, controlled, but with an undercurrent of something he hadn't heard before. Fear. Marcus, I need you in my office, now. He walked to her office. The door was closed. When he entered, Diane was sitting behind her desk, her face pale. On the desk was a printed email. She pushed it toward him. The email was from an anonymous sender. It alleged that Marcus had falsified data in the Viridian due diligence report. It claimed that he had been bribed by Julian to overlook critical safety issues, and it threatened to send the allegations to the SEC, the board of directors, and every major financial news outlet unless the firm paid a ransom of $2 million. This is
Blackmail, Marcus said. Obviously, but the question is any of it true? Diane's eyes were hard. No, the data was clean. I reviewed it myself. Julian didn't bribe me. I don't even know how to falsify clinical trial data. Then someone is trying to destroy you, or destroy the firm, or both. Diane stood up and walked to the window. I've already called the lawyers, but Marcus, this is going to get ugly. The board will demand an investigation. You'll be suspended until it's resolved. I'm sorry. Marcus felt the world tilt. Suspended, investigated. His reputation, everything he had built, threatened by a lie. The old Marcus would have panicked, would have called a lawyer, would have spent the night drafting furious denials. He paused. He breathed. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? Yes, but not because of the accusation, because of how he chose to respond. I'll cooperate fully, give them everything. My emails, my notes, my phone records. I have nothing to hide. Diane turned to look at him. You're taking this very calmly. Getting angry won't help. Neither will panicking. The truth is on my side. Let the investigation run its course. Diane nodded slowly. I'll recommend a leave of absence. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Don't talk to anyone about the case except the lawyers. And Marcus, don't do anything stupid. I won't. He walked out of her office, packed his things, and left the building. He took the subway to Union Square. He sat on the bench. He called Sarah. I've been suspended. Someone is trying to blackmail the firm. They're accusing me of falsifying data. Sarah gasped. That's insane. You're the most honest person I know. I know, but it doesn't matter what I know. It matters what they can prove. And they can't prove anything because it didn't happen. What are you going to do? Nothing. I'm going to wait. I'm going to practice the pause, and I'm going to trust the process. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I visit you? I want to learn how to handle something like this. Come to Union Square tomorrow, 7 a.m. Wear comfortable shoes. The next morning, Marcus and Sarah walked through the park as the sun rose. He taught her the breathing. He taught her the question. He taught her to separate what she could control, her own responses, from what she couldn't, other people's lies. This is the hardest test, Marcus said. Not a bully like Julian, not a crisis like my father's heart attack. This is a slow, grinding attack on your reputation. It's designed to make you react, to lash out, to defend yourself, to say things you'll regret. The only way to win is to do nothing. Nothing? Nothing. You cooperate with the investigation. You tell the truth, and you let the lies burn themselves out. Sarah nodded. I think I understand. You don't yet, but you will. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. Marcus was interviewed twice by the firm's lawyers. He handed over his laptop, his phone, his notebooks. He answered every question calmly and honestly. He did not speculate. He did not accuse. He simply stated the facts. On the 22nd day, Diane called him. It's over. The investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing. The anonymous email was traced to a disgruntled former employee of Viridian, someone Julian fired 2 years ago. He's been arrested for extortion. Marcus closed his eyes. He felt the relief wash over him, not a flood, but a slow, steady tide. Thank you, Diane. She said, Don't thank me, thank yourself. Most people would have cracked under that pressure. You didn't. I don't know how you did it, but I'm impressed. I had good teachers. Come back to work on Monday. We have a lot to catch up on. Marcus hung up. He sat on his couch, looking out the window at the city. He had faced the fire. He had not burned. He sent a text to Teresa. Cleared. No charges. The mountain stands. Her reply came a minute later. Leonard would have smiled. Part 28. The Legacy of the Harmonica. On the first anniversary of Leonard's death, Marcus woke before dawn. He dressed in black, not out of mourning, but out of respect. He took the subway to Union Square. The park was empty, the sky still dark, the only light coming from the street lamps. He sat on the bench. He pulled out a harmonica, one he had bought the week before, after weeks of practicing in secret. He didn't play well, but he didn't need to play well. He needed to play. He put the harmonica to his lips and played the only song he knew, a simple, mournful melody that Leonard used to play on the same bench in the same park on nights when the world felt too heavy. The notes drifted into the cold air. A homeless man sleeping on a nearby bench stirred, listened for a moment, then went back to sleep. A taxi passed on Broadway, its headlights sweeping across the park. When Marcus finished, he sat in silence. He felt Leonard's presence, not as a ghost, but as a memory, a reminder that one person could change another person's life without ever knowing the full impact. He put the harmonica in his pocket, he stood up, and he walked to the subway, ready to face another day. That afternoon, he received a package in the mail. It was from Teresa. Inside was Leonard's duct-taped notebook, the one he had carried everywhere, the one filled with lessons and reflections and fragments of his life. He opened it. The first page read, "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. Be useful. Teach someone what I taught you. And remember, the mountain doesn't flinch." Marcus smiled. He turned the page, and he began to read. The notebook was a map of Leonard's mind, chaotic, brilliant, raw. There were lists of triggers and responses. There were quotes from philosophers Marcus had never heard of. There were confessions, regrets, and small victories. There were drawings of mountains. Marcus read the whole thing in one sitting. When he finished, he understood Leonard more deeply than he ever had. The man had not been a saint. He had been a warrior, fighting his own demons every day, losing sometimes, winning sometimes, but never giving up. That night, Marcus wrote in his own journal, "Leonard's notebook is now mine. I will add to it. I will pass it on. This is how we live forever, not in our bodies, but in our lessons." Part 29. The Breaking of Sarah. Sarah called Marcus at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Her voice was shaking. "Marcus, I need you. I did something stupid." Marcus sat up in bed. "What happened?" "I was at a bar with friends. An old ex-boyfriend showed up. He started talking to me, saying all the things I used to want to hear. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew I should leave, but I didn't. I stayed. We talked for hours, and then we went back to his place." Marcus waited. "This morning I woke up and he was gone, and so was my laptop, my work laptop, with all the Viridian files, the confidential ones." Marcus felt the cold spread through his chest. "Sarah, you need to tell me everything, right now." She told him. The ex-boyfriend's name was Derek. He had been arrested before for fraud. He had a gambling problem, and now he had a laptop full of proprietary data that could destroy Viridian if it got into the wrong hands. "I'm so sorry," Sarah sobbed. "I know better. I teach the pause. I practice every day. But last night, I didn't pause. I reacted. I wanted to feel wanted. And now I've ruined everything." Marcus took a breath. He paused. He asked himself the question, will this matter in 5 years? Yes, but not because of the mistake, because of how Sarah responded to it. "Listen to me. You made a mistake, a serious one, but you're not the first person to make a mistake, and you won't be the last. What matters now is what you do next." "What do I do?" "First, you call the police, report the theft. Second, you call Diane. Tell her exactly what happened. Don't hide anything. Don't make excuses. Third, you come to Union Square tomorrow morning. We're going to practice the pause until you can do it in your sleep." "Diana's going to fire me." "Maybe, but if you hide this, she will definitely fire you, and you'll deserve it. Honesty is the foundation of everything. Without it, the pause is just a trick." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Okay, I'll do it." The next morning, Marcus sat with Sarah on the bench. She looked terrible. Red eyes, unwashed hair, trembling hands. But she had made the calls. She had told the truth. Diane had been furious, but she had also been
understanding. "You did the right thing," Marcus said. "The hardest thing, but the right thing." "I still might lose my job." "Maybe, but you won't lose yourself. That's the difference between the old you and the new you. The old you would have hidden this, lied, tried to cover it up. The new you faced it. That's growth." Sarah looked at him. "How do you stay so calm, even now, even after everything I did?" Marcus thought about Leonard, about the elevator, about the blackmail, about all the times he had wanted to react and had chosen to pause. "Because I've learned that panic doesn't help, anger doesn't help, blame doesn't help. Only action helps. Clear, honest, deliberate action. That's what the pause is for, to give you the space to choose the right action." Sarah nodded slowly. "I want to be like you." "No, you want to be like yourself, the best version of yourself. That's what Leonard taught me, and that's what I'm teaching you." They practiced the pause for an hour. By the end, Sarah was still scared, still ashamed, but she was no longer crumbling. She was standing. The police recovered the laptop 3 days later. Derek had tried to sell the data to a competitor, but the competitor had called the police instead. He was arrested. Sarah was not charged, but she was put on probation at work. Diane kept her on, but demoted her to a junior role. Sarah accepted the demotion without complaint. She told Marcus, "I deserve this, and I'll earn my way back." Marcus smiled. That's the mountain talking.
Part 30. The Wedding of Sarah. 2 years after the laptop incident, Marcus received an invitation to Sarah's wedding. She was marrying a man named David, a high school history teacher, patient and kind, the opposite of Derek in every way. The wedding was small, held in a garden in Brooklyn on a perfect June afternoon. Marcus sat in the front row, next to Teresa. Julian was there, with Elena and their new baby. Diane came, looking uncomfortable in a floral dress. Even Victor showed up. He and Marcus had developed an unlikely friendship over the past year, bonded by their shared connection to Leonard. Sarah walked down the aisle in a simple white dress. Her face was calm, her eyes bright. When she reached the altar, she looked at Marcus and smiled. The ceremony was short. The reception was longer. Marcus gave a toast. "Sarah taught me something important. She taught me that the pause isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back up when you fall. She fell. Hard. But she got back up, and she kept getting back up. That's the most dangerous confidence of all. Not the confidence that never fails, but the confidence that keeps going after failure." Everyone applauded. Sarah hugged him. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything." "Thank Leonard. He started it." Later that night, Marcus stood alone on the rooftop of the venue, looking at the stars. Teresa joined him. "You've done well. With Sarah, with yourself. Leonard would be proud." "I still miss him." "Of course you do. That's love. Love doesn't go away. It just changes shape." Marcus nodded. He pulled out Leonard's harmonica, the one he had learned to play, badly but sincerely. He played a few notes. The sound drifted into the night. "What's next for you?" Teresa asked. "I don't know. That's the thing about the pause. It doesn't give you a map. It just gives you the space to choose your own direction." "And what direction are you choosing?" Marcus smiled. "I'm going to write a book. About Leonard. About the pause. About becoming dangerously confident. I want to reach people I'll never meet. People like me before I met Leonard. People who are drowning in their own reactions." Teresa raised an eyebrow. "A book? You?" "Why not? I've got a story to tell, and Leonard's notebook, and time." "I think that's a wonderful idea." They stood in silence, watching the city lights. Somewhere below, a band was playing. Somewhere, a child was laughing. Somewhere, a man was sitting on a milk crate, playing a harmonica, waiting for someone who needed to hear the truth. Marcus put the harmonica away. He walked back inside. He had a book to write. Part 32. The First Page. Marcus started writing the book on a Sunday morning 6 weeks after Sarah's wedding. He sat at his kitchen table with a cup of blank coffee, a blank notebook, and Leonard's duct-taped journal. He wrote the title first. "The Mountain Doesn't Flinch. How to Become Dangerously Confident by Reacting to Nothing. Then he wrote the dedication. To Leonard, who saved my life, and to everyone who is still drowning, this book is for you. The first page took him 3 hours. He rewrote it 7 times. He wanted it to be perfect, not because he was a perfectionist, but because he wanted to honor Leonard's legacy. He wanted every word to matter. When he finished the first page, he read it aloud. The first time I learned that I didn't have to react to everything, I was standing in a crowded subway car and a stranger's elbow was pressing into my ribs. I could have said something. Every muscle in my jaw wanted to speak. But something stopped me. Not fear, not politeness, but a strange, unfamiliar whisper from a part of my brain I rarely visited. Watch. Don't react. Just watch. He smiled. It was good. It was honest. It was the beginning. He wrote every morning for 3 months. Some days the words came easily. Some days he stared at the page for hours, writing nothing. On the hard days he practiced the pause. He breathed. He reminded himself that the book didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be true. Teresa read each chapter as he finished it. She cried twice. She laughed more times than he could count. She gave him notes, brutal, honest notes, and he accepted them without defensiveness. Sarah read the chapters about her. She asked him to change her name. He did. She asked him to leave out the part about the laptop. He refused. That's the most important part, he said. It shows that the pause isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back up. Sarah thought about it. Then she nodded. Okay, leave it in. The book was published 18 months later by a small independent press. It sold modestly, a few thousand copies, but the reviews were strong. People wrote to Marcus from all over the country. They told them their stories, their struggles with reactivity, their small victories. One letter came from a prison in upstate New York. The writer was a man named Jerome, serving 10 years for armed robbery. He wrote, I read your book 3 times. I never knew there was another way to live. I always thought confidence meant being the toughest guy in the room. Now I understand confidence means not needing to be tough. I'm practicing the pause in here. The guards think I'm on medication, but I'm just breathing. Thank you. Marcus framed the letter. He hung it on his wall next to a photograph of Leonard. Part 32. The Return of the Past. 5 years after the book was published, Marcus received a call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to. Marcus Reed? The voice was female, hesitant. Speaking? My name is Emily Cross. Julian Cross is my father. He's in the hospital. He's asking for you. Marcus's heart tightened. What happened? Heart attack, similar to what your father went through. He's stable now, but he's scared. He said you were the only person who ever made him feel like he could change. He wants to see you. Marcus looked at his calendar. He had a meeting in an hour, a book signing next week, a dozen commitments. The old Marcus would have said, I'll come next week, I'm too busy. But the new Marcus paused. He breathed. He asked himself the question. Will this matter in 5 years? Yes. I'll catch the next flight to Boston. Which hospital? He flew to Boston that afternoon. Julian was in a private room at Massachusetts General, hooked up to monitors, looking older and smaller than Marcus remembered. His wife, Elena, was sitting by the bed, holding his hand. Julian smiled when Marcus walked in. You came. Of course I came. I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies, for the threats, for being such an asshole. Marcus sat down in the chair beside the bed. You already apologized, years ago. I forgave you. Now focus on getting better. Julian laughed weakly. You're still the same, unshakable. I'm not unshakable. I just know how to pause. They talked for an hour. About Viridian, which had been acquired by a larger pharmaceutical company for $1 billion. About Julian's children. Emily was the oldest. He had 2 sons as well. About Leonard. Marcus told Julian the whole story, including Victor's revelation about the stolen money. Julian listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, Julian said, Leonard wasn't so different from me. We both did terrible things. We both tried to become better. The difference is he succeeded. I'm still working on it. We're all still working on it. That's the point.
Before Marcus left, Julian grabbed his hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." "You saw it yourself. I just pointed." Marcus flew back to New York that night. He sat on the plane, looking out the window at the clouds, and thought about the web of connections that had formed over the years. Leonard had saved him. He had saved Julian and Sarah. Sarah was teaching others. Julian was a better father. The chain was unbroken. Marcus put the harmonica away. He walked back inside. He had a book to write.
Part 33. The Last Lesson. Marcus was 52 years old when Teresa called him with the news. She had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable. "I have 6 months," she said, "maybe less." Marcus felt the grief rise, the same grief he had felt when Leonard died, but this time he did not suppress it. He let it fill him. He let it break him, just a little. Then he paused. He breathed. He asked the question, will this matter in 5 years? Yes. Forever. "I'm coming to see you," he said, "today." Teresa was living in a small apartment in Brooklyn on the top floor of a walk-up building. She had decorated the walls with photographs, Leonard, Marcus, Sarah, people Marcus didn't recognize. There was a copy of his book on her nightstand, worn and dog-eared. They sat on her couch, looking out the window at the Manhattan skyline. "I'm not afraid to die," Teresa said. "I've made peace with it, but I'm afraid of leaving things unfinished." "What things?" "You, Sarah, the work. Leonard and I started something. You've carried it further than we ever could, but I want to make sure it doesn't end with you." "It won't. Sarah is already teaching. I'm still writing. The book is reaching people I'll never meet." Teresa nodded. "I know. That's why I'm not afraid. But I wanted to tell you something I've never told anyone." Marcus waited. "Leonard and I were in love, for years, but we never acted on it. We were both too broken, too afraid. By the time we were ready, it was too late. He was sick, and then he was gone." Teresa's voice cracked. "I've spent the last 10 years regretting that. Not the love, the silence. I should have told him." Marcus took her hand. He knew. He had to know. "Maybe, but knowing isn't the same as hearing, so I'm telling you, because you're the closest thing to him left in this world. I loved him, and I love you, Marcus, like a son, like a brother, like a friend." Marcus felt the tears come. He did not wipe them away. "I love you too, Teresa. You saved my life as much as Leonard did. Maybe more." They sat in silence as the sun set over the city. Marcus pulled out the harmonica. He played the mournful melody, the one Leonard used to play. Teresa closed her eyes and smiled. "That's him," she whispered. "That's his song." Marcus played until his lips were sore. Then he put the harmonica away and held Teresa's hand until she fell asleep. She died 3 months later, surrounded by friends and family. Marcus spoke at her memorial. He read a passage from Leonard's notebook. "The mountain doesn't flinch, but the mountain also feels. Feel everything. React to nothing. That is the path." After the memorial, Marcus walked to Union Square. He sat on the bench. He played the harmonica, and he let himself grieve. Fully, completely, without shame. Then he stood up. He walked home. He had work to do. Part 34. The Next Generation. Marcus was 55 years old when he met a young woman named Jasmine on the 6 train. She was sitting across from him, crying silently into her phone. He couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see the pain in her face, the same pain he had carried for so many years. When she got off at Astor Place, Marcus followed her, not to scare her, to help her. "Excuse me," he said. "I don't mean to intrude, but I saw you crying. I've been there. If you want to talk, there's a bench in Union Square. I'll buy you a coffee." Jasmine looked at him with suspicion. "I don't talk to strangers." "That's smart. But I'm not a stranger. I'm someone who learned how to stop reacting to everything, and I think you need that right now." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. They sat on the bench. Marcus told her about Leonard, about the pause, about the question. Jasmine listened. When he finished, she said, "My boyfriend just broke up with me. He said I was too emotional, too needy, too much." "Do you think he was right?" "I think I react to everything. Every text he didn't send, every time he looked at another woman. I couldn't stop myself." Marcus nodded. "That was me, for 34 years. And then I met a man who taught me that I didn't have to be that way." "Can you teach me?" "I can show you, but you have to practice. Every day, no excuses." Jasmine agreed. Marcus taught her the breathing. He taught her the question. He gave her a copy of his book, and he told her to come back to the bench every Saturday at 9 a.m. She came, week after week, month after month. She fell sometimes, reacted to a rude coworker, sent a text she regretted, cried in the bathroom. But she kept coming back. She kept practicing. After a year, Jasmine told Marcus, "I'm not the same person. I still feel things, but I don't let them control me." "Thank you." Marcus smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank Leonard. And then go teach someone else." Jasmine nodded. "I will." Marcus watched her walk away. He pulled out the harmonica. He played the melody. And he thought about the chain. Leonard to him to Sarah, Sarah to others, him to Jasmine. It would never end. It would keep growing, branching out, touching lives he would never know. That was the real legacy. Not the book, not the promotions, not the money. The lives. Part 35. The Mountain at Sunset. Marcus was 68 years old when he returned to Union Square for the last time. He had retired from the hedge fund 5 years ago. His father had passed away peacefully at 83. His mother had followed a year later, holding Marcus's hand. Sarah was now a senior partner at a different firm, known for her calm under pressure. Jasmine was teaching the pause to at-risk youth in the Bronx. Julian had died 2 years ago, but not before reconciling with his oldest son. The park had changed. The benches were new. The milk crate where Leonard used to sit was long gone. But the spirit of the place, the chaos, the noise, the endless stream of human struggle, remained the same. Marcus sat on the bench. He was older now. His hair was white. His hands were gnarled with arthritis. But his eyes were clear, and his heart was calm. He pulled out the harmonica, the same one Leonard had given him, though he had replaced the reeds twice. He played the melody. It was softer now, slower, but still true. A young man sat down next to him. He was maybe 25, with dark circles under his eyes and a tremor in his hands. "That's beautiful. Where did you learn to play?" Marcus lowered the harmonica. "A friend taught me, a long time ago." "I wish I had a friend like that. I feel like I'm falling apart. My girlfriend left me. I lost my job. I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about everything I did wrong." Marcus looked at the young man. He saw himself. He saw Leonard. He saw the endless chain of broken people trying to become whole. "Sit with me," Marcus said. "I have a story to tell you." The young man sat. Marcus told him about the subway platform, about the conference room, about the hospital, about the elevator, about the blackmail, about Leonard, about Teresa, about Sarah, about Jasmine. When he finished, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "That's a lot. Can I really change like you did?" Marcus put the harmonica in his pocket. He looked at the young man with the same eyes Leonard had looked at him 40 years ago. "You can, but it won't be easy. It will hurt. You will fail. You will want to give up. But if you keep going, if you practice the pause every day, if you ask yourself what matters, if you choose your responses instead of being controlled by them, you will become someone you don't recognize, someone stronger, someone calmer, someone dangerously confident." "Can you teach me?" Marcus smiled. It was the same smile Leonard had given him all those years ago. Come back tomorrow, same time. I'll tell you the first step, but only if you promise to do one thing between now and then. Anything. Someone will do something that makes you want to react. A rude comment, a delayed text, a memory that stings. And when that happens, you're going to do nothing. You're going to breathe, and you're going to ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Can you do that? The young man nodded. I can try. Marcus shook his head. No, trying is for people who are preparing to fail. You will either do it or you won't. There is no try. The young man took a breath. I will do it. Marcus stood up. He patted the young man on the shoulder. Good. I'll see you tomorrow. He walked away from the bench towards the subway. He did not look back. He didn't need to. The chain was unbroken. Leonard's legacy would live on, through him, through Sarah, through Jasmine, through this young man whose name he didn't even know yet. He descended the stairs into the subway. The train was crowded, a stranger's elbow pressed into his ribs. Marcus did not react. He just smiled. The mountain doesn't flinch.